What?
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to start with finance, and do we have anybody on public comments?
I believe there's no public comment registered.
Skip the announcement. And we'll start right away. Welcome, everybody. And tonight we're going to hear from Dr. Rachel Holler from the IU, and she's going to give us a program and services budget overview. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's great to be here. My name is Rachel Holler. I'm an Assistant Executive Director at the Bucks IU, and I have the pleasure of kind of giving you an overview of the programs and services budget that will be up for your approval, and a little bit of a history as to why you might be doing that. So first of all, thank you. We really appreciate our partnership with Penridge. We certainly provide services for you in a variety of different ways. We're really focused tonight on programs and services that we'll talk a little bit more about what those entail. But it's always a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you the budget and what this is all about this evening. So first I wanted to share with you just a little bit about why, that there's the why behind the budget. So every year, Pennsylvania School Code requires that a majority of the school districts that comprise the intermediate unit, in this case Bucks County, which are 13 entities, approve the budget annually. And so the programs and services budget is the only IU budget that is actually voted upon by member school districts. So we have the pleasure of really being the one that's out there in the public for all of you to take a look at. The rest of the budget that the Bucks IU consists of, which is much larger, as I'm going to show you kind of visually, is something that the Bucks IU handles. But you all are going to be able to weigh in on the programs and services budget, and that's something that you'll for those of you who may be the first year on the board, you'll get to see this every single year because we come back every year and continue to get your approval for our budget. All the other services that we provide, such as what you're probably most familiar with from an intermediate unit perspective, is special education. Those services are actually purchased separately. So it's something that's completely separate from what we're talking about this evening. Programs and services budget is that, again, that one unique piece, but anything else that we're providing that are other kinds of services, you would just purchase separately as part of your needs for the district. So the timeline, just so you see where things are, is that we start off in January, and we had preliminary approval by our Bucks IU board on January 16th, and then right after that, our board secretary sends out the budget to all of your districts in Bucks County for approval, and also certainly send it out to Penridge. By April 16th, we get final approval from our Bucks IU Board of School Directors, and then we submit our budget to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So again, that one budget from the Bucks IU that actually gets submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, the programs and services annual budget for 23-24, and I'll explain why we're looking at 23 current year figures, is that we have not approved our 24-25 budget. Just as you're in the budget development process, so are we as an IU. So our budget from this current year is $212 million. The programs and services budget is $2.2 million for the 23-24 school year. So you can see about 1% of the Bucks IU budget consists of my division that I oversee, which is the programs and services. Now I say we're small but mighty. We're out there doing a lot of different things throughout the county, certainly also within your district, but it's something that it really comprises just a very small sliver, as you can see visually, of the entire Bucks IU budget. So this is the existing budget. I would love to give you figures for 24-25 and give you that same sliver. It might, quite frankly, become less than 1% as we look at our Bucks IU budget in relationship to the programs and services, but that will not be finalized until June. So that's something that we certainly can provide later, but right now, it's to just be able to show apples to apples. I thought that you could appreciate seeing the programs and services budget in relation to the entire Bucks IU budget. So for 24-25, shifting gears, looking at this upcoming year that would be under your review and approval, is that we're looking at a total budget of $2.4 million for the upcoming 24-25 school year. The overall percentage increase is at 6.28%. However, we've kept the district percentage increase to just 1.88%. So while the entire budget goes up, what we typically do is district contributions. We try to really look for entrepreneurial ways to make the difference up. So while we are trying to continue to grow as a program, and certainly also see the same kinds of growth areas that you may have, such as salaries of individuals, we keep the actual percent of the district contribution smaller. And so for this upcoming 24-25 proposed budget, the district contributions in entirety, all of the 13 school districts, comprise less than 50% of the budget for the programs and services. So what we do is we make up the difference with our entrepreneurial efforts. And that may include seeking out grants funding. Certainly we also do some work to support for the Pennsylvania Department of Education with their initiatives. And we also continue to look for ways to find partnerships and other ways to keep that district contribution as steady as possible. And so the district contribution increase really amounts to 25-cent increase in the per student calculation rate. All right, so I'll pause there to see, and so far, any questions?
So you make up about 1.4 million with other
We do.
entrepreneurial and grants. How much of that is grants?
Right now, for the projected amount is actually $0. What it amounts to is Pennsylvania Department of Education every year does provide some funding, and we wouldn't call it a grant. It's actually just funding that provides a support that they've directed. The Pennsylvania Department of Education is rather slim in terms of personnel, so they often call on the intermediate unit to essentially deliver services that they otherwise want to provide but just couldn't have the population to do so. So every year, Pennsylvania Department of Education gives us initiatives that they say, we'd like your support doing X, Y, or Z. And so that's part of the funding that comprises that. But for the projection for next year is that the exception would be one of the things that we do provide in the lower part of the county. It's essentially through a grant, but it's not a grant that we've received, is we actually provide grant evaluation support for some of our lower county school districts that have 21st century community learning center programs. And so in turn, what happens is they will provide funding for us to then essentially evaluate their grant that they have received. So it's not necessarily, it's indirect funding, I guess, from a grant. That's an example of some of the kind of entrepreneurial work that we do. Okay. So for this year, so I gave you the big picture of how things work from an IU perspective. Now we're going to drill into Penridge. And so the overall programs and services budget, which I shared for the upcoming year, is $2.4 million. The Penridge's contribution is 3.4% of that. It's $81,000 of the actual budget. So you can kind of get that perspective then, almost similar to the small sliver that I showed you with the Bucks IU's overall budget and programs and services, what that makes up. If you then drill in and we're looking at just the actual programs and services budget, the Penridge contribution is $81,000 of that. Okay. And so just to give you kind of that progression is that we have our overall budget, and again that's 23-24 numbers, that first one, since we do not yet have our 24-25 budget and the comparison with programs and services. But that small sliver, if I make that the entire circle for the graph, then you can see that the sliver within that is Penridge's contribution of $81,000. Okay. So what I'd like to share with you next, let me see if it'll go up, there we go, is that major categories of support. Some of the things that we provide vary by year, and we certainly work with your team here to identify what kinds of supports are needed year over year. We try to be dynamic and meet the needs of your district from year over year and what your major initiatives are. So some of the things that we provide, you can see the list of them there. I won't go into detail in every single one of those categories, but I'll provide some highlights. So one example is just professional education services. Every time that we offer some kind of professional learning event at the IU, we try to offer that with economies of scale in mind. And so Penridge will often come to an event that we host at the IU, and so you are taking advantage of that, the professional education services that we provide. Another highlight would be our Bucks County Career Pathways Partnership. We have a Career Ready Bucks website, and you all have certainly made an investment in career over time in the district, and so we have someone from Penridge sitting on our executive committee related to the Career Ready Bucks initiative. And we also then, when you have your career event in the spring, we will be there at that event. We will be able to provide that support as well. So that's another just example of some of the things that we would do to provide support for your district. Another example is our ability to do advisory councils. And so it's really a great way to network, and certainly we do that on a very regular basis. And even the example of superintendents coming together to make snow calls, and that idea of really bringing the 13 school districts together in our 3 career and technical centers to help make some common decisions and to have some common language related to initiatives. Our Programs and Services Advisory Council is one that I facilitate, and that's something that, in your case, Kathy Brewster-Scheid is one example of someone who serves on that and is a part of that advisory council. And by coming together and talking about common topics, we're able to talk about what's happening across the county. How can we support each other? What are some things that we want to do as a county to get collectively? And an example is that we actually have been working on an artificial intelligence learning session over time to start to understand what that's all about and how that's going to impact our schools. And so that's just one example of something that we've been doing within that advisory council and some of the resulting meetings. I also support all levels of principals with advisory councils, so I have the pleasure of seeing some of your principals that are able to come to those meetings periodically throughout the year, and the list goes on. We have advisory councils for just about every content area, as well as for some of our special areas as well. So that's an example of some the other ways that our advisory councils provide support. And I'll pick out just one other one that we do, and that's comprehensive planning. Some of you had the pleasure of working with Chad Evans, who really does the legwork when it comes to comprehensive planning. It feels like after you've just finished a comprehensive plan, it's time to do another one, and he's always there to provide that support throughout the cycle of the 3-year cycle when it comes to comprehensive planning. So just another example of the types of services that we provide within the realm of those 12 different categories. And some highlights for all of you. What's happening right now and for the current school year, what's planned, what have we been doing to support? One of the things is certainly the Career Pathways Partnership that we continue to provide support. We're also really pleased to have 2 representatives from Penridge that are part of the Leadership Development Fellowship Program. That's an annual program that I have the pleasure of facilitating, and that's a great way to build capacity through your district to be able to get the future leaders ready for their next opportunities, and that's something that Penridge has invested in over time. Support with quality indicators and co-teaching in partnership with our program and training specialists assigned to your district. We provide support in that area when it comes to special education needs as well. We also have some mobile Fab Lab visits that we have already completed and some that we have planned, and I have a couple pictures to highlight some of that work as well. And then for the upcoming year, we will be rolling up our sleeves, and it's time for comprehensive planning support again. So that's something else that we have on the horizon. So just a couple snapshots when it comes to specifics with the STEAM services, which was one of the categories, and our mobile Fab Lab programming. We have a 5 Penridge residencies scheduled for this year. We already completed 2 of them. So we were at Siler in September, we were at West Rock Hill in October, and then we have 3 more planned for the spring. So I thought you'd appreciate, I asked our supervisor of STEAM education to give you a couple snapshots. After every one of our mobile Fab Lab visits, we provide a snapshot that could certainly be sent out to families or to the community in terms of what's been done. And so you can see a little bit of a highlight. I love that smiling face at the top of the screen there to show something that was done at Siler when we were there for the September programming. And then I have the other one for West Rock Hill, and we'll have 3 more to come in the spring after we complete those 3 residencies as well. And just if you've never seen a mobile Fab Lab visit, just what is that all about? That's actually a program that we've invested in. We actually originally got some grant funding for that program back in 2018-19 school year, and we literally rolled out our first mobile Fab Lab in 2019 before COVID kind of put the brakes on for a little while. But we were able to do a wonderful set of visits throughout the time until the pandemic, and then kicked it back up in 2021. But what it looks like is we actually have a transit van, and that transit van has a variety of equipment such as 3D printers, laser cutters, etc. And whatever that school has identified for the week is of interest that they're going to be working on, we actually create the custom tailored curriculum for that week. So it's usually tied into something that your students are learning about in the school for that particular week. And then they actually go into the school, they unload the van for the week, set up shop, and then they actually are there kind of embedded in the school for the week, and then roll back out after the week is over. So it's a great opportunity to provide you with some equipment that you might not otherwise be able to have for students, and also that really builds the capacity of teachers to see how that the STEAM kind of ideas can fit in. So I think it's a program we're really proud of, and we certainly have taken time since that grant funding to continue to invest in it. And some of what the funding is that from our programs and services budget is actually paying for the staff member who's out in your schools doing that wonderful work. So just to reiterate the timeline, what we're looking at now is for an upcoming meeting for your consideration of the budget. With your approval, then we will actually take it back to our Bucks IU board in April, and then with final approval, we will send that budget off to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So what other questions do you have for me? Anything that you're wondering about when it comes to the programs and services budget?
Dr. Heller, the Fab Lab, is that focused on elementary schools, or is it for any level of school?
While it could be for any level of school, what we really have found is the sweet spot is elementary. It sometimes goes to middle schools. By the time at high school, you actually have things in your high schools that are higher, at a higher level than what we would be able to fit in a transit van to get out there. So really the focus is at this point elementary, to give exposure to students at the younger ages.
Okay. And does it work that all the Bucks districts get about a week per year for elementary school?
I wish we could get to every single school district, but we can't. So each year we work with the school districts to set up a schedule and we put out the call for who wants to have the van visit. We did actually add a second van. That second van is actually focused on our non-public schools, because we were able to use some of our Act 89 and other kinds of funding to support that. So we're getting more students within our midst, but in terms of the actual capacity, we would probably need 3 or 4 vans to get to every school, once a week throughout the school year. But you've been beneficiaries for many years now.
Okay.
So typically the entire school gets to use part of it or see it?
So it depends on the school. What they usually do is they focus on a specific grade or a couple grade levels, and then some schools decide to do every student gets a little taste of it, and they might have like one class period, if you will, going into the mobile program that's set up in a classroom. And other schools decide to really only focus in on certain grade levels and not give exposure. If my memory serves me correctly, I think that the 2 schools we visited so far have tried to give as many students exposure as possible.
And how does sign up work? Does the IU put the call out?
We do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever.
And
first
you're
come,
always
first
on
served.
the ball getting the request in. Mm-hmm.
And then question about the instructional materials and research services. So just question around the resources that are offered. So discovery, education, experience, brain pop, etc. How do those get on that list? Is that the school saying this is what we use, can you get us value pricing, or does the IU make recommendations?
A combination of both. In some cases, what we hear is that a school district wants to see if there's a way that they can leverage the IU to get some kind of consortium type of pricing, and so we're able to negotiate with a company and do that. In some cases, we actually work across all of our IU colleagues. We have 29 IUs in the Commonwealth, and so sometimes all of the IUs essentially work together to get that consortium pricing at a price point. So for example, I think Brain Pop is one of those examples where we were able to leverage that collectively across the Commonwealth. But we certainly kind of use a little bit of both. So if your district came to us and said, could you investigate consortium pricing for XYZ kind of an offering, then we would certainly do that. In some cases, when we reach out to companies, they say, yeah, we already have the market share, we're not interested, we don't need consortium pricing, we're not going to offer a reduced price because we have the market. And in other cases, they're very willing and able to do that. So I think it just depends on the provider. But that list kind of changes over time. And sometimes we find that in the world of technology, something that existed 5 years ago might kind of combine forces with another product or two, and then we try to stay nimble and to kind of find the latest and greatest that are out there.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had a couple questions. These actually maybe for Angela too. For the ones that are learning for staff, like that leadership, do we do a selection process in here first for when people who are interested, like is there a limit on how many people from each district can attend, or are these things that staff just reach out directly to the IU and say, I'd like to take this class?
Well, I think for like the leadership cohort, that would be, we would identify staff and engage them
Okay.
for that. And then other times, we have opportunities, like last Friday, we had an advocacy, Mr. Wers attended, with local legislators to talk about trends and things happening in the field. So sometimes we clearly select people that we think would benefit from these various programs.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to talk with you about the budget, and certainly if there's any other questions come up even after today, I'm happy to address them with all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to, in my short time as far as returning to Bucks County as an employee, that Bucks IU has just been fantastic, a truly wonderful partner and service agency, and we have our monthly superintendent's meetings, and it's just, I've gotten personally a lot out of our collaborations with Dr. Hoffman, and it's just been fantastic, and you do fantastic work.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would echo that too. You helped us find a new superintendent.
Awesome.
Another
Absolutely.
service provider.
That is something that would be on the list.
That's
Mhm.
beyond,
Mhm.
but thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Well, just for your knowledge, I have Joey on the phone.
Oh, is that?
That was just called in, wasn't someone out of space, it was Joey.
I mean, it was a very pleasant break.
All right, moving right along.
Mr. Wurz, is you okay if we move the IU budget to vote next, at the voting meeting in February? We're okay to move this to a vote? The
Move it to a
IU
vote?
budget?
Yeah, I mean, is there any questions or anything? Anybody have any questions on that budget? Then,
Thank you. So we'll move that up, number one along for a vote then.
Okay.
Okay? Budget?
Budget?
Yes, budget.
Okay.
All right, so my goal tonight is just to give you a kickoff and an outlook for 24-25 budget. Not really to get into nuts and bolts of numbers yet, as we're still working very hard within our departments and in HR to develop the personnel budget. We have met with every department leader in the last 3 weeks. Angelo, myself, Dan DeRisa, our Director of Finance, and then the department leaders sit and we go through their budgets for either their schools, maintenance, transportation, so forth. So everyone has a budget meeting. Everyone has a chance to come in, sit down with us, talk about what they've asked for, talk about things they might need, talk about what their goals are for their buildings. And it's also a great opportunity for us to learn from them and to see what the needs are. So we've just finished that process on Friday. Was our last budget meeting. Mrs. Mossman is hard at work on the personnel budget, and we have our first run of that finished, and we're starting to review that in depth to make sure that we have every person identified with actual costs for salaries and benefits for next year. So my goal here tonight is to kind of give you an idea of where we're at on 22-23 fiscal year. I was hoping the auditor would be here tonight to present the audit report to you, but they're not quite finished yet. So the numbers that I will show you will be our numbers that we have at this point without any final adjustments from them. What we do with the 2022-23 positive budget variance and capital projects, where we're at as far as funding, your role as a school board in the budget process, just a little bit about school finance, what it's all about, and then what assumptions we make, and we use those assumptions as we develop the budget moving forward. So 22-23. At this point, I'm expecting a very positive variance in revenues of about $6 million, about 4% above budget. And I have the actual number highlighted because it could change a little bit once we have our final audit adjusting entries. And our expenditure side, actual with a variance of $549,000. So we're getting very close on the expenditure side to actual the budget. only a 0.37% difference. Our excess of revenues over expenditures are about 6.8 million, which is about 4.5%. And as we've talked in the past, we were always looking for about 2.5% on either side of that, revenues and expenditures. We did really good in revenues. We're a little tighter on expenditures, but we ended up in that ballpark for a year-end positive variance. And what do we do with that 6.8 million? That transfers to capital projects, and that's how we fund all the summer capital projects work that we do. And we'll look at that a little bit later. Fund balances at the end of 22-23. These are the estimates. We'll maintain our total general fund balance of 16.5 million. Capital projects funds will go from 20 million to 14.3 million, and that is with the $6 million transfer in. So we are spending more in capital projects than we're adding to the bucket. As you guys remember, the board members that were here in the last 3-4 years since COVID, the projects that we identified that we wanted to do, the costs increased dramatically for those projects. So it has eaten into our available balance. And this is at the end of 22-23. This does not include the projects that we're working on now, 23-24, and or the projects that happened this summer, summer of 23 into the 23-24 year, and what we have identified for next summer, which will be 24-25 project, okay? We are limited to 8% of fund balance based on our general fund budget. General fund budget is about $154 million. This limit of 8% applies to the unassigned fund balance, so that really can't go any higher because that's at 8%.
But can you go back?
Yep.
So what are the three things in the general fund for everything?
Non-spendable fund balance. So it's, and I have a slide down a little bit further about fund balance categories. The non-spendable are basically audit requirements or accounting requirements. It could be the value of inventory or so forth. That actually is the value of fund balance also. So it's non-spendable. You have committed fund balance. Years ago, the district committed an amount of money to set aside for ongoing increases in PSERS costs. PSERS costs, and I have a slide for PSERS costs, it started to really start to level off. So really what we've been doing is shifting the committed down to the unassigned as we go, because the 8%, trying to maintain an 8% fund balance of our budget. So we're shifting those funds down to maintain our 8% and decreasing the committed fund balance. Because everything we make, or every excess dollar we have revenue over expenditures at the end of the fiscal year, we're putting here in capital projects. So if we don't shift these dollars, we'll fall behind on our unassigned fund balance, which we want to keep around 8%. So that's our emergency fund.
And why is that important too?
Yeah, it's just like at home. You want to have a savings account, and you want to have a certain amount of money in your savings account that if you lose your job tomorrow, you can operate for a certain period of time till you get another job. That's what we're looking at with an unassigned fund balance. We could have a drastic downturn in interest rates, which would cost us a couple $1 million in interest. We could see a downturn in the economy where folks in our district lose jobs and our EIT, earned income taxes crash, right? So all things that could happen within a fiscal year that we didn't see coming, but would cost us dollars. So unassigned fund balance is there in case you need it to fill those gaps or some large expense could happen that we're not prepared for and we don't have capital money for. We lost a roof, major failure in an air conditioning system, something like that. If we didn't have capital funds for, we'd have to pull from our unreserved fund balance or unassigned fund balance to pay for those things. So really it's that savings account just like you have at home in order to, basically avoid disaster. So
Credit rating too, right?
credit rating too, absolutely.
What's our credit rating?
We are one below the best credit rating was our last bond issue, and we got there because we have adequate reserves in place. We budget conservatively. We annually run surpluses, and which we transfer to capital projects, and we fund our own capital projects funding. So all those things that we try to do, the rating companies really like. So, okay. Capital projects fund. So really, our goal in the district since I got here is to do our capital projects, the things that we need to do them every year, identify them and do them every year, and do that without borrowing money, which means without floating additional bond issues, having interest expenses, and so forth. So we're trying to pay as we go. That's why we make that transfer every year. So that's been kind of our theme, to maintain the buildings and do what's necessary. Now, if we get into something big, like we had to build a middle school or build a high school or build an elementary school or something like that, then we're gonna have to borrow money. But just trying to maintain what we have and keep the facilities up to date, running smoothly, make sure HVAC systems are running, make sure parking lots are paved and don't have holes all through them, right? That's been our thing the last couple of years. Making sure that we're just doing really well and maintaining our facilities. So that's what our goal has been. So, and each year on average, we've been able to shift about $4 to $5 million into that fund. So, and we were doing really great until the prices went really high. And really, when prices went really high, you saw the expenditure number getting closer to budget because the prices went, the prices went really high. So we're getting pinched. We're getting pinched on that. So it's getting harder to have that $4 to $5 million. Okay, so capital projects funding. You can see the expenditures from 17, 18, the second line down. We tried to spend $4 or $5 roughly $1 million a year. And then when we get to 22, 23, all the prices just went crazy. We went 12.9 million. So you can see how, we were maintaining a pretty good fund balance year-end in capital project, and we were really putting the money back in each year as we were using it. But we had this year where we spent 12.9 million and added 6.8 million, so we're down to 14 million. And what's that look like going forward is we have about 6.3 million in 23-24 that we're working through. The projects that were done last summer, we're working through paying for them. And really some of this stuff gets paid for up front. So some of the projects in 23-24 we started to pay for in 22-23, like the planning and development part of that. So really, what we're expecting, 23-24, I try to be very conservative in what I say is coming in. I'm going to say $2 million. Hopefully it's more than that. But you can see at the end we're about 9.9. And then when we get to 24-25, this number's much higher because if you remember in 24-25, that's when our debt service drops off. And our debt service drops about $6 million. And we had always planned that when that debt service drops off, we transfer that to capital projects fund. And then we're able to start building for bigger things. And we'll talk about that because that's something that you will see as we go through this process. We have some difficult decisions to make moving forward because of the price increases and because of additional costs, and we'll look at those. But this is the forecast for capital projects.
The forecast?
Yep.
So the forecast there drops to 5 million. Is that just an estimate?
Yeah, just an estimate. So we know what. Yeah, we know what 23-24 is. 24-25, we know what that is. We've already approved those, and these are our bid numbers for everything's in place for next summer. This is the money that was kind of all the projects that were kind of left over that we didn't get to. So we're still kind of identifying those, and then we're really waiting for that new plan that we're going to go through. And I don't really want to rush that plan. I want to make sure we do that right because we know what we have for next summer. Stuff's already lined up to do and stuff. But anyway, we need to take a whole fresh look at what projects we're going to do based on what funds we have and so forth. So, and that's that's what Site Logic's working on.
Right. Should we explain that to what's going on? You guys are doing, just so everyone knows about the, because we have we don't always know what kind of money we have to spend in facilities for maintenance, just to keep the place going.
Right.
And sometimes they're big items, sometimes they're small, so Site Logic's working on something.
All right, so I've been working with Site Logic for the past few months, identifying all of the assets in the district. When I say assets, it's everything from a roof to boilers, lighting, walls, parking lots, flooring, everything that's an asset in the district. Identifying those, giving them ratings so that we can come together and prioritize what are the needs of the district. We're only about 70% done, but we are working through that process so that we can bring to the board, here are the issues that we have right now, and there's going to be unlimited ones, obviously. There's a certain budget we have to conform to, so we're going to have to prioritize and decide what projects we will do and what years we can do them. And there's all these other things, like Sean has mentioned, the price of things have escalated so much, so that makes things challenging. But we are actively working on a 5 to 10 year plan, identifying every need in the district so that we can have those conversations in this venue in the next few months. Hopefully March, April would be an appropriate goal to consider that we would have those discussions.
So we try not to have big surprises hit you, come in here one day and say we need X, Y, and Z. We want to make sure that if we're going to need X, Y, and Z in 3 years, now you know about X, Y, and Z is coming, right? So that's the goal of that whole
And we
project.
can, obviously, the salaries in the contract, your expenses far out.
Yes,
We always have a problem with facilities, to what's gonna pop up.
right. And emergencies happen.
Yeah.
It happens. But we're trying to plan as best we can. So. Role of school board in the budget. So, you as a school board, one of the most important things you do as a school board is you put in place the budget each year. It's superintendent's job to provide you the budget. It's my job by being his proxy to give you that budget. But then it's your job as a school board to put that budget in place. And that budget is basically the roadmap we follow on expenditures and revenues. So we have to, I think this bottom one is a pretty good statement. So basically we're trying to balance the competing things of what our kids need, what we want as far as an education for our kids, with what can our society, our folks and our here in the district pay for. So what can the taxpayers afford? So it's a balancing act. We've been very lucky here. We have great resources. And we've been able to maintain those great resources without raising taxes for 7 years. So our families, our folks, our residents have been happy with us. But that's not something that, it's just the average, law of averages. It's not going to happen forever, right? So again, it is one of your most important functions as a school board is to put the budget in place, and it's a delicate balance of you put the policies in place, you put the budget in place to fund those policies, and when that's in place, then we have a roadmap that we follow through the fiscal year, and it provides us that guidance. Now, it never ends up the way it starts, because on day 2 of the fiscal year, something has changed, right? And we make changes to that budget starting in October. You see budget transfers come every month. But that's basically us working through that living document, because it changes as we go and things change. So the benefits of what a budget will give us. It identifies where money and the resources come from. It establishes that relationship between costs and the programs. Tells us what programs cost. Gives us an idea about the cost of building maintenance, what it costs to run the district from facility standpoints. Tells our community and our business community what our needs are financially. And it's just a whole number of things there that parts of the budget does. So So it's just not a collection of numbers, it is expression of the values of the board, what the board wants to put forward. That's what the budget does. School finance, a little bit about that. So budgeting, it's required by state law. There's two parts of it. There's the expenditure part of it. We got the expenditure bucket here, we got the revenue bucket here. And when we're done, if we did a really good job, they equal, right? Sometimes they don't. Expenditures are more than revenues, you gotta pull from that fund balance to pay that, to bring it up, right? If revenues are more than expenditures, that's pretty good, right? Because then we end up with the surplus and we end up moving money to capital projects and funding other things. So it's a balancing act, it's a shell game, and it's forever changing. So we're required by the state, there's the thing called the Pennsylvania School Accounting Manual. It instructs us on how we account for expenditures. So there's 5 major categories that we put expenditures into. So there's instructional costs, support service costs, non-instructional services, capital outlay, and other financial uses. The instructional costs are 61.5% of our budget. So the majority of the money that we spend goes to instruction, goes directly to the classroom. That's what we want. We want most money that we can get to the classroom. So we're almost 62% of the money straight to the instructional level. Support services are everything that supports the educational process, the whole way from guidance counselors, nurses, principals' offices, maintenance budget, transportation, technology, all the way down, everything goes to support services. Non-instructional services are student activities like athletics, band, things like that. Things that kids are doing, but it's not in the classroom. It's extra stuff. Capital outlay, facilities and construction costs. And then other financial uses, really that's where our debt service goes. And then within those major categories, we do a further breakdown. Salaries and benefits, contracted services, property services, other purchase services, supplies and textbooks, equipment, other, and debt. Salaries and benefits make up 72.6% of our budget. The biggest part of our budget is people costs. We are a people industry. We teach children with teachers. So, you know, we're not manufacturing widgets. We're teaching kids, and that our biggest costs are our people.
Where's the PSERS one? Is that in there?
Benefits.
So it's covered.
So PSERS would go into every one of the 5 categories and broken down to benefits within each category.
Oh, it doesn't have
Mhm. Yeah. So every one of those categories, these categories fall under each of the 5 majors. So within instruction, you have all those. Within support services, you have all those. So, okay. So when we start talking about expenses, there are things that you can control as a school board. We can control things that we can't control. We can control our staffing. We can decide whether or not we're going to hire a teacher, or if we're going to hire a custodian, what we're going to do. We can control class size. So you can decide if you want 22 kids per class or 26 kids per class. What's right, what's wrong. It's your decision. Facilities, you can control whether you put money into facilities, whether you fix the things that break, whether you clean them or not, right? You can control that. There are places that don't do those things. We do them here. Just walk around, you know, we do those things here. It's important to us. Collecting bargaining units, you have some control there. You can decide to pass or not pass a collective bargaining agreement. Non-mandated programs. So anything we do that's not mandated by the state, we have some control over. You can choose not to do X, Y, and Z if it's not mandated by school code, right? I'm not going to say X, Y, and Z because I don't want to start. They're going to cut that out. So we're not going there. We're not going there. So other things that are uncontrollable, you have no choice but to pay for the PSERS rate, right? PSERS rate is going to be 33.9% next year. So 33.9% of every dollar we pay in salary, we have to add another 33.9% and send that to PSERS. And we get half that back. That's a lot of money.
What do you mean? Half that back, what did you mean?
State shares in our costs 50-50. We have to put it all up front. and then they return 50% of it as a revenue to us. That's why you'll see expenditures for PSERS, and then you'll see a revenue line for PDs. Yep. Charter school tuition is developed by a state tuition rate calculation. We have no control over that calculation. It's just, it is what it is. And if a family decides to send their child to charter school, we pay the bill. We have no choice. We have no choice to say, we have that program right here. We would rather you stay here. We don't have that choice. There's such a thing in Pennsylvania called school choice now, and it costs us a lot of money in charter school tuition. So it costs us about $14,000 for every regular education child that leaves and goes to cyber charter school, and it costs us $37,000 for every special education child that leaves here and goes to a cyber charter school or a brick and mortar charter school. Even if they only need perhaps, and let's say, a half hour of speech a week, we still pay $37,000. There's no delineation between on what services they need. We can't control where we're at. We can't control our geographic location. We can't control the cost of what our southeastern Pennsylvania is, right? We are what we are. We have to live within that. Mandated programs, special education, caseloads. A teacher can only have so many kids in a special education classroom. We can't change that. That's state law, right? If we violate that, we get in trouble. English language development, another one. It is required, and you can't, and there's caseloads and so forth, and you can't not do those things, right? They are mandated programs. So there's things you can control and there's things you can't control, and they all factor in. So revenue sources, 3 major revenue sources: local, state, and federal. By far, we get most of our money from the local taxpayers. And by far, within that, we get most of our local money from real estate taxes. The second number, highest one, is earned income tax. Okay, state taxes, we get well over $100 million in local tax. State taxes, we get about 30-some million dollars. So it's a big gap in how we're funded. And then federal money, very small, maybe $1 million or $2 million, right? So the education in Penridge, just like our neighbors, most of our neighbors in the southeast, is very much paid for by the local taxpayers, not by the state, not by the federal government. But yet we live under all the same rules, and we have all the same mandates and so forth. But yet our taxpayers, local taxpayers, get to cover that bill, right? Which makes it even more amazing that for 7 years we haven't had to raise taxes. So what if we do need to have more money? What do we do? So we have an Act 1 index each year. So there's a limit to how much we can raise real estate taxes each year. It comes out each year. It is derived by the economy, the statewide average weekly wage. There's some great formula in school code, and they figure out what the index is each year, and whatever that percentage is, that's your limit that you can go to. The other thing we can do is bond financing if we need to build a building or something like that, or we run out of money. So we either tax or we borrow. Those are our options, right? So some things that impact our revenue, our ability to generate revenue locally: zoning of tax parcels, trends in assessed value of real estate, whether we're building, whether we're growing in our assessed value, which means we're building more homes, more businesses, and so forth here. Other tax generating capacity, earned income tax is the big one there. Practical and legal limits on rates of taxation. So we're only allowed to raise taxes so much, and once you don't raise it, you've lost it. So over those 7 years, every one of those Act 1 index percentages that we left go and we didn't raise taxes, we can't go back and recapture. They're gone. Could never get them back. State subsidies, federal and state grants, and fund balance. So those are our avenues of money to collect taxes. We have been lucky in the last 7 years, and due to the fact that our assessed value has grown, we have had tremendous growth, tremendous construction. Think about the things that have happened, the 55 and older community on 313, huge source of tax revenue for us. Many other developments and so forth. Earned income tax. Our earned income tax when I came was about $14 million a year. It's now $22 million a year. Our earned income tax has grown that much in 7 years.
Where do local businesses fall in this? Like, is having a business come in more beneficial for taxes for us than residents?
So, local businesses support us through the real estate taxes from the building or facility that their local businesses housed in,
Right.
and then through earned income tax from the people that they employ, make money, and they pay earned income tax. So we get earned income tax for the residents. So for a business that's in our community, if the residents live here and work here, we're getting the earned income tax from those residents also. So yes, they participate. Businesses participate in the real estate taxes, and then they provide us with hopefully good wage earning jobs that, provide more taxes. So
There's
yes.
also another benefit to that.
Okay.
The benefit is we don't have to provide services to the businesses because they don't have any schools open.
Right.
So now you've got a void there, an opportunity. The businesses you have come to town, greater tax increases, or greater revenue from taxes, but you don't have to provide the services.
Right.
And that's a big scenario. If you look at future growth, start to weigh it against housing, which creates the need for, if you're doing regular housing, for educational services. If it's a business and they're employing a lot of people, there's no educational services necessary for that particular structure.
And so like even then are the assessments for the real estate tax for a business property different than for a residential property?
Well, generally a property for a business is going to be larger
Yeah.
and so forth. So yes, generally their assessed values are higher, right? Because you're talking about square footage. But there's uniform assessment within the county. So that the last time Bucks County was assessed was like 1973, 71. So we are working with some really, really old numbers. So they have to take they take a brand new building and then they go and they try to figure out what that was worth in 1971, and they apply an amount on that, right? That's why when you look at your real estate tax bill, the average home in our district has an assessed value of like $35,000, right? But yet it's selling for $550,000, right? But it's being taxed at $35,000. But everything's supposed to go back to that number, so it's uniform. So everyone has a fair, uniform assessed value, and that's why our millage rate is 135 mils, right? If we were paying real estate taxes based on market value, our millage might be like 2, right?
Yeah.
Because we got a $550,000 home for a $35,000 assessed value. So it's all in the number. So if the assessed value goes up, that millage has got to come down. So even if we had a reassessment, there's a windfall clause. You can only have so much more than you had the year before.
And that's still for new things. So like if a new business property is built, like
Yep.
a new Wawa goes there, so this still makes
We
sense.
love Wawa. Yeah. Love Wawa. Love it. I love Wawa. I love 55 and over community.
Yeah,
Love it all.
yeah.
Just keep building it, right?
Right.
But then again, you have to think about our community as a whole, right? We still want to have some green space. We still want to have parks. We don't want it to be so congested that you can't drive up the road, right? We have a beautiful community, and so there has to be a balance,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
There has to be a balance.
And the county does work on that assessment issue every time a house is sold. So when you sell a house, they reassess your property. And a good example is I had a gentleman call me up and say, Bob, I don't understand this. My tax bill keeps on increasing, but it's the state. Well, what are you doing on your house? Well, I put an addition on it. An addition got reassessed, didn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to look at. That's one of the ways in which the county is not going into looking at a major bill from a reassessment standpoint, they do it on an individual basis when a house gets sold.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why permitting happens. I mean, you can't do anything without getting a permit, right? So you want to put a pool in your backyard, you gotta get a permit, because you're now telling the township, because the township has real estate taxes. You're telling the county, because they got real estate taxes. You're really telling us through those processes, because we have real estate taxes, because everybody wants a piece of that pool. Or whatever it is that you add or buy or put on, so it's just constantly changing. So the growth in that assessed value, the growth in that earned income tax, and some other things have allowed us to, make up and keep moving forward without having to raise taxes. So we've been able to, the revenue has kept up with our expenditure needs. So. Okay, so funds. You'll hear the word funds. You'll hear the word general fund. You'll hear me say that a lot. So general fund is the major budget that we have. Like the whole $154 million runs through the general fund. So that's our major budget. We also have a healthcare fund. So monies that the district pays each month for employees' health insurance premiums, and the money that comes off of employees' checks go into the healthcare fund. The healthcare fund then pays for the health insurance and the claims for our employees.
What is it? Self-funded?
Self-funded. We are self-funded. And we do have stop-loss insurance so that we don't, get killed by $1 million claim. Capital projects fund, we talked about that a lot tonight. That's where we're doing all of our big projects. Food service fund, so your school lunches. It's a separate fund. It operates on its own, and it is self-supporting. Okay. Student activity fund is accumulation of all the kids' money. We hold it as a fiduciary. We don't make decisions on how they spend it. Kids do that, which is a great way for kids to learn how to, function and spend money and earn money. And then the debt service fund. Really, our debt service payments go in that fund and go out, but that's the debt payments are budgeted in the general fund. So it's really just an accounting fund. So those are the funds that we have.
You say food service is self-supporting?
Yeah.
Every year, is every school district self-supporting?
So a food service fund is supposed to be a self-supporting fund. We have, in Penridge, have been self-supporting. We have not had to use money from the general fund. There are districts that their food service fund loses money, and the general fund has to pay to make up that difference, but we don't have that problem here. Fund balance. We talked about fund balance a little bit before, and really, it's beginning fund balance plus revenues minus expenditures equals ending fund balance, but it's really, it's an accounting term. So the measure of your net financial assets is adequate to cover emergencies, but you can't use it to plug a hole that's recurring. If you do that, you're going to run out of fund balance and you're going to go bankrupt, right? It's not a recurring source of revenue. One-time investments and conservative budget balancing keeps you safe. Fund balance. Fund balance, these are the 5 areas, Ron, that you had asked. These are the different levels of fund balance. As you get down, they become less restrictive. Unassigned is an 8% limit, and that's what we showed you before. The ones in brown are board controlled. The ones in white, non-spendable and restricted, are really accounting type fund balances, or inventories of prepaid items, or something that's imposed by law or externally imposed. And then the committed, assigned, and unassigned are board decisions on what they want as far as fund balances. And like I said, only the bottom one has a limit to it. The 8%, any district has a budget of more than $19 million, the fund balance limit is 8%. Again, our budget exceeds $154 million. This year's Act 1 index is 5.3%, right? We did not file for Act 1 exceptions. We don't do that. We don't need them. So our allowable tax increase estimated revenue is about 4.6 million. So if we raise the taxes by 5.3%, it's going to generate about $4.6 million. Budget assumptions. This chart is a look at the major categories of employees and the percentage of salary increases. So if you look in 22-23, administration and miscellaneous at 2.5% increases. The teaching contract that year had a 2.19% growth percentage increase, and support had a 2.41%. Now they are the last year contracts that had averaged 2.5 over the life of the contract. So they kind of go up and down each year, but on average those contracts were 2.5%. So then we get into 23-24, current year, admin and miscellaneous stayed the same. The teaching contract was budgeted at 2.5%, and if you remember, it settled right before school started at 5.62%. It's about 2.6 million wages, about 3.7 million total cost when you take wages and benefits, okay? In October, roughly, November, the PSD, the support contract settled. It was budgeted at 2.47% this year. It settled at 7.18%. Cost about $917,000 in wages, about 1.3 million total. Again, 7.18% gross, budgeted at 2.47%. 24-25 year, which is the year that we're budgeting for. Administration stays at 2.5. It stays the same amount till it ends. Miscellaneous will be 2.5. It follows administration. But teaching is a 3.37% growth, 1.7 million in wages, 2.4 million total cost for the year. Support, 4.36% gross, another 597,000 in wages, 854,000 total cost. And then when you look out, 25, 26, 26, 27, these start to come back into more, what I would say, normal percentages for us. We're roughly 2.5. They're still a little bit higher, but we're back to getting into normal ranges. Support goes 246, 306. Again, we're getting closer to where we were before. So, why do I bring this up? Historically, we run 2.5%. We've always been able to pay for those 2.5% increases each year through the things we talked about, the increases, natural increases in revenue. You also have breakage each year. What's breakage? That's when people retire. Teachers retire. There's a difference between a new hire salary and where they're at the top of the scale. It's what we call breakage. That's that savings part for a new hire teacher. That creates savings in the budget. So we get 10, 15, 17, 18 teachers a year that retire. That breakage, along with the increases in local revenues that we've talked about, have made up those differences. We've been able to balance the budget without any tax increases, right? Now you jump into 23, 24, where we had contracts settle higher than we budgeted. So what that means is we have a hole. You're jumping into 24, 25, we have second year contracts that are higher than normal. So the picture I'm painting is that we have about $6 million in salaries and benefits that aren't budgeted for, that are hitting in 24, 25 budget. Do you remember what the index increase was? 4.6, right? Okay, so don't panic yet, but just remember this. This happened, and it happened for a really good reason, right? I'm not painting a picture saying that anybody did anything wrong. What happened had to happen. We couldn't put teachers in the classroom because we weren't competitive in salaries. Before COVID, what did they tell us? There were 20,000 teachers that came out of the state schools a year before COVID. Last year it was 5,000. Pennsylvania's lost 15,000 teachers a year since COVID started, and we are all fighting for all of those teachers, right? Just in this county, there's 13 school districts and an IU that all want those teachers. And there might be a handful of special ed teachers in that group. So what this is had to happen. We had to get competitive, or we weren't going to put teachers in classrooms in front of kids, right? So I have no problem with this, okay? We couldn't get bus drivers. We couldn't get teacher aides. We couldn't get custodians, right? We had to raise rates. We had to. We had to. It's the only way we could do it. We had to raise rates, right? In order to get people to come to work. So I have no problem with this. The other board had to do it, and it was the right thing to do when they did it. But it comes to roost now because we have to figure out how to put 2 years of it in the next year's budget, right? Okay, so, and we'll figure it out. But it's not gonna be as easy as it's been in the past. The natural growth can't keep up with 6 million in salaries and benefits, and that's not including the growth in everybody else's budget, right? So in our meetings, we have been we've sent the message, it's been very clear. If you came into our meeting with a budget increase, if there wasn't a very, very good reason, you were going back and you're bringing your budget back down to where it is this year. And then we explained that's our starting point, because then we need to go down further. But what I don't want to do, what we don't want to do as an administration, is rob Peter to pay Paul. I don't want to take all the money out of the classroom that the teacher has for everything they need, just to pay for that, right? Because then we're creating a hole somewhere else that we got to fill, all right? So there's ways to kick the can down the road, but if you kick it down the road, it just gets bigger. You could pull from fund balance, but then you're using one-time revenue for a recurring expense, and you got to pay the piper. If you pay it later, you pay more than you do if you pay it up front.
Could you also talk about the ESSER's funding?
Yeah. So ESSER's funding, as we know, excuse me. ESSER's funding is drying up this year. ESSER's was a program that came out as the pandemic hit. The federal government started just flooding everybody with money, which is great. Happy to have your money. We put a number of positions in place. Most of those positions have to do with developmental kindergarten, special education teachers and aides, ELD, so English language learners, and I think that's
Summer enrichment.
summer enrichment. Everything we put in place had to do with catching kids up and helping our kids in the most need. And really, everything that we did were things that were mandated. They were on the mandated list. ELD, special ed, all that's on the mandated list. You have to have it. That money's gone. So we have to take those positions and put them into the general fund budget now. All right, so there's about 8 or 9 of those positions. And we'll show you all this detail later as we get through the process. But those positions are needed. They're needed to maintain the services that we put in place so that kids can thrive, right? So it's the funding cliff, right? It's the great funding cliff. This happened back in like 2008 or so forth, when the banks crashed, everything crashed, economy crashed, federal government threw all this money at school districts, and then 2 years later they pulled the rug out from under you and said, now you have to pay for it. But we did X, Y, and Z, and we still need X, Y, and Z. Well, it's your problem now. That's what this is, right? They knew if we put 5 special ed teachers in the classroom, we can't just take them out, right? They're there. We got to keep them. So yeah, this is what we're dealing with. This is my goal, is just to be clear with you tonight and let you know right up front what we're dealing with this year. If we handle this and we take care of it this year and do it right, 25, 26, 26, 27, 78, it's not going to be that big of a problem. But if we kick the can down the road, we're just going to make it bigger. So.
Well, but we're already behind what even ACWA would allow us, right?
Yes.
Well,
Just
year by year.
Right.
Just with that number.
Yeah.
Just with that number. It's above what ACWA will allow us to have. But there's other increases. Natural growth in real estate taxes.
Right.
We'll work those in. We get assessed values multiple times a year from the assessment office. We'll build that in. Earned income tax increase, we'll build that in. Very strong right now in interest earnings. please don't wish for an interest rate cut, okay? Before the pandemic, we made $150,000 a year on interest. This year, we'll make $3 million a year on interest earnings. So,
So, can I ask a question? So 2023, do you have 5 million more? Is that what the yellow part is? Is that total 5 million more in expenses for salaries? Because the contract started.
yes.
Okay, what was did you show the revenue versus expenses for 23? Or 23, 24, we're still waiting for that?
Still working.
Well, no, it's not
How-
5 million
Oh.
more.
How are we doing?
How are we doing this so far this year? Well, this year we're doing really great in revenue, which I'm
You
very
showed that, right?
sure that. Well, that was last year.
That was last year.
But this year, again, we're doing really great revenue. This year, we have part of those two increases we have to pay for, out of this year's budget
Right.
that we're budgeted for. So we're gonna be tight this year on the expenditure side. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
But you anticipate something going to fund, to the
Yeah,
capital project?
I had
That's fine.
I had the 2 million there, the real low number. So
But just so, it's not 5 million that we don't have, because we had like 2.6, but it ended up costing 3.7, right?
no,
And
sorry.
now 3.7 is above.
We budgeted 2.5.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we budgeted 2.5. Our settlement was 5.62.
Yeah,
So, it's over half, or it's over double,
right.
So that 5.62 actually cost 3.7, and then down below, the 7.18% actually cost 1.3. So when I took the difference and I added in the 24, 25 increases also, so all four yellow numbers, then it comes up to about 6 million over what we have budgeted.
And then there's an additional 3.2 more on top of this for the next year, so.
This,
For 24, 25.
yeah, this 6 million, I have all four of those.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the net of the 23, 24 numbers, what we need in addition to what we already had, and then the total increases for 24, 25 add up to about 6 million. Okay?
When will you think you have the numbers for the audited numbers, for the actual?
Hopefully next month. They have to be done next month. We have some reporting deadlines are next month. So, okay, any other questions on that? That's a lot. There's a lot on there. There's a lot on there, but okay. Last thing I want to show you is this is when everyone talks about PSERS rate going crazy, right? And the PSERS rate is the percentage of what we pay on top of of everyone's salary. It has averaged about 11% over the time. This chart's pretty cool. It goes the whole way back to 54, 55. Stole this from one of my old-time friends that he's not in the business anymore, but then I've just kind of been keeping it going. But in the mid-'80s, it went up, and then it went whole way down to basically, there was one year we were paying like a 0.18% of every dollar, not 34%. And then Governor Ridge, he decided to change the PSERS benefits for the folks in the legislature. And when he did that, he also increased for the state employees and the PSERS employees. And basically, he doubled their pension and he increased school district employees the multiplier percentage from 2 to 2.5. So for every year you work, you used to get 2%, now you get 2.5%. So he really increased the value of pensions. And then the financial crisis has hit. Stock markets crashed, recessions hit. Right? And how PSERS is funded, it's funded by part of what the district's paying, part of what the employees paying. The biggest part comes from investing. So when all that crashed, we had a major problem. And then this is what happened. This rate went from down here about 5% in about 2010, the whole way up to 35.26 it was 2 years ago. This year it's 34, next year it's 33.9. PSER's estimate goes to 38.26. They are only going out about 5 or 6 years now with their estimate. This was an old estimate that they did years ago, what they thought was going to happen. But it's interesting because each year, this thing will go up here, this will go up here, and it'll be interesting to see. Each year we'll see this just keep going up. So I don't see any relief for us in the near future of when's this thing going to come back down. It's come down a little bit, but it's going to go back up. And really this little blip here, it's about a 2.29% difference. It's going to save us about $34,000, which is great, you know. It's about half of a salary for a starting teacher. So take everything we can get.
So I don't know much about PSERS. So is it like a guaranteed amount people are getting? And so if the market goes down, you have to find other ways to make that money in there so that it's not like a 401k that's reflective of the market. It's
a defined benefit plan, not a defined contribution. So the benefits you get are defined by law, and they can't change. So it is funded by like the three ways we talked about: the employees part, the employer's part, which is shared by the district and the state, and then the investment part. So the biggest part of the funding is that investment part, and when everything crashes and it loses, you know, billions of dollars, that's what happens to the rate. And so those financial crises happened and so forth. Then the state did some magical hokey pokey accounting, and they did some laws where they feathered it out and they pushed it out, and you know what happens when you kick the can down the road? It costs you more later. And that's what they did. Instead of paying for the problem when it happened 15 years ago, they kicked it down the road, and that's what we're living with. And I mean, the pension plan's like $65 billion in the hole. It's in the red. Yeah. Yeah. It might be a little better now.
The state was not putting in its contribution.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, they were putting in their contributions. The percentage was too low. So they weren't. They were, but they weren't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Projecting.
Mm-hmm.
So would it ever happen that if the market's like amazing, then schools that year would have to put in less? Like,
Market has been amazing.
Yeah, that's the problem.
The market's amazing right now. We went down a whole 0.10%.
Who's checking all those numbers?
It is such a big problem that a couple years of great stock market returns, it's not going to fix it. It has to be a long, drawn-out process of funding it adequately for years to come.
right. So I mean, obviously these are the things that you say we don't have control over,
Mm-hmm.
but what are ways that districts can like provide input to this process? Is it all just legislature and?
It's all legislative. It's all legislative. They set the rate and we're forced to pay it.
Our residents.
Our pay.
Yeah.
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 Everybody.
It will
Yeah, I agree.
think about, I mean, when you're talking about $80–90 million in salary, when you throw 34% on top of that, that's a lot of money.
Big number.
Well, and I also know this is a big draw to work for the state. Like your salaries are incredible, like in private sector, you're banking on this kind of thing. So I understand.
That's all I have.
Oh, I have questions. They're more education.
Yeah.
So the debt service, is that just any debt we have, or is that usually from a large amount of money we've borrowed to do a big project like build the new central with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's for big things like that. So if we borrow a big lump sum,
Mm-hmm.
how is it determined how quickly we have to pay it back, et cetera? 'Cause it's a lot of money,
Depends on how much you purchase,
right?
or I'm sorry, how much you borrow, what your current debt service looks like, what room you think you have within your budget to pay that debt service, to increase your debt service, what if any millage rate you're willing to put on to pay for that.
Bond rating?
Your bond rating impacts your interest rate. Interest rates are high right now, very high, compared to where we were when we redid our bond issues a few years ago. So all that factors in, but you'll see a drop of about $6 million in our debt service this year. We had 3 issues that ended this current fiscal year that are gone. We have 1 issue that's school district money that was borrowed years ago and has been redone a number of times to get lower interest rates. And then we have an issue for the tech school debt. That's all the debt we have right now.
That's great.
In 4 years, I think it's 4 or 5 years, we'll be gone. 28, fall of 28 is our last debt payment. So,
Like on average, how long does it take if we borrow $20 million? Like, it takes 10 years to pay it back, 20 years? I know it depends on.
All depends.
I mean,
Like-
it really depends on us
Yeah.
and how long you wanna carry your debt service out.
Right.
You wanna do 10 years, 15 or 20?
Yeah.
That's why we have a.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
interest.
now,
Yeah.
if you're building a $150 million school
Mhm.
and you are putting the debt in place to do that, you're probably looking at a 30-year debt because you're looking at a 100-year asset, right? And if you're going to borrow, say $10 million out to do a project that, I don't know, how long was the chiller last? 15 years, 10, 15 years? I wouldn't want to borrow that money longer than the life of that
Right.
asset that we're putting in place. Or we're going to be paying for it after the asset's gone, right?
What
So-
was the last
Wouldn't that be
project?
questioned by bond counsel?
Sure would be.
Damn right.
Sure would be.
Yeah, I'm not
What was the
convinced.
last project like that for us? Was it
La-
pool or the stadium?
The last major project, I think, was the high school renovation.
Oh, renovation. So the stadium, we self-funded?
field was after this, wasn't
Yeah, the stadium was a bond issue. Yes, stadium was a bond issue.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Yeah, and what has happened over the years is there's been like a number of bond issues, and then when you go to refinance, you take everything that's left out of those, you put it together into one big bond issue and refinance that. So it's, after so many years, it's hard to track that back to, okay, what was this for? It could be, the money we're paying now could be part of the high school, it could be part of the district support center that was redone, it could be part of the stadium, it could, I doubt that it's central,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And then I had another question.
Yeah.
Just the charter school money.
That's great.
That hurts. And again, obviously not in the control of like the finance department, but what are things we can do to make people want to have their kids here? Like, I don't know, do we evaluate the different reasons kids are in charter schools and see, because you're right, you said we can't, even if we had the service here, if they choose to go to the charter school, we can't make them come here, right?
Correct. Before COVID, before pandemic, we had, this number sticks in my mind, we had 123 kids in charter schools, cyber and brick and mortar. When COVID hit, the year after COVID, we had 175 kids out in charter schools, so we went up. We've worked our way back down to 130. We're 130 this month. We look at this every month, how many kids we have in these schools. So we're down to 130 kids, so we're almost back down to where we were at before COVID. We have our own cyber program, so there are a number of kids that, like when they start talking about options maybe going, our counselors and the people that run our cyber program will meet with the kids and the families and say, listen, we can do this here with you. You can do cyber here. You can do cyber for this part of your day. You can come into the school for this part of your day. You can be on this program, you can be in this activity. You can do this sport or whatever. We will blend a program to suit the needs of that family. So those are the things that we're doing to keep that number from going up, right? To keep kids here. I think it's hard once they're gone to bring them back, right? But we're making that effort, and it's one thing that Mr. Barrios has said that he wants to have happen is these families get re-engage the families and see. If we get one back, it's saved. And I truly believe, you'll never tell me otherwise, there's no kid in Penridge getting a better education out there somewhere than right here with our teachers.
And so how does that count for like head count then? Do we formally then say that student is no longer part of our student population, so it's not anything that's considered in class sizes?
Right. They're no longer a part of our student population, correct. And there's no reimbursement from the state for those kids. There used to be a partial reimbursement from the state, but they cut that 10, 15 years ago. Now we fund the whole bill. So it is an unfunded mandate from the state of Pennsylvania, for sure.
How does the educational improvement tax credit affect our, like the way that, I had to even look it up because I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but I know that that's like being able to move your tax money around.
So yeah, that's a credit which people can use to donate the money that would go to state taxes to some charitable organization, some nonprofit. Really doesn't do anything for us. Doesn't do anything for us. It reduces the amount of money that goes into the state coffers, which to me means then there's less money in the state coffers to come to school districts. So I'm not sure how that helps us.
So I was more thinking that it was a detriment to us than.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
No more questions? Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He does an amazing job with the numbers year in and year out.
Thank
you.
And I've never met a CFO with a better understanding of numbers. And
Thank you.
it's impressive. So thank you. All right, moving on. Contracts for approval.
Okay.
You want
Yeah, we'll jump into those. Contracts. The first contract we have is PSBA, management-related services for unemployment compensation claims for the school district. So the cost here is $4 per employee. This is a renewal. We already have this service in place. And they're changing their format from a calendar year to a fiscal year. So they're doing a 18-month time frame from January to June of 2025. And we use this service for unemployment claims where the company, it's called Interstate Tax Service, goes out and represents school districts at the unemployment compensation claims, and they're our advocate, and they track the unemployment comp. They go to the hearings. They basically they fight. They're our legal representative there, and they're fighting for school districts to try to lower our unemployment compensation claims. If they save one claim, it's well worth the $4 per head count that it costs us. And we have about 1,000 employees. This costs us $4,000 a year to have this service, and they're there at any time we need them. They go to the hearings. So if Tara has to go to a hearing for unemployment comp, they go with her, and they provide that service, and they make sure that we are adequately taken care of at those hearings. And so it's well worth the time, right, Tara? So
Do we receive many unemployment compensation claims?
Do we receive many unemployment compensation claims?
We don't receive many, but we do, especially in the summertime, with support staff and not understanding when they do not work during the summer and not being paid for the summer, we will have unemployment claims that come in the summertime. But they work through that, and they reach out and they share with us all the information. We just fill out the form, and they take care of everything with the unemployment.
And there's times when we will have employees leave on their own, they'll go file for unemployment. These folks jump in there and make sure that, I mean, if they qualify, they qualify. But if they don't, oftentimes they'll be given benefits, but these folks will make sure that if they're getting benefits, they should have benefits. So, the next contract is Screencastify. This is used by our educators to create asynchronous videos to engage students and teachers to improve learning outcomes. The cost is $12,700, up from $11,600 last year. So this is a renewal of this program, of this software that our teachers use for the asynchronous learning for kids. So, okay.
How long do we have that?
I'm not sure when we started, but
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah. The next one is Discount Bounce. This is an obstacle course for the high school mini-thon. So it's paid for by the mini-thon program, but you get that approved for them. The next one is Theater World. This is our backdrop for our high school musical. If you remember last year we did this where we rented the backdrop. They brought it in, set it up. Our parents were a part of that whole process. It worked out really great. If you remember last year's spring play. So they want to do that again for this year's. And again, that's something that's paid for by that program. The next one is Camp America Day Camp for Seiler Elementary School. We have a number of our elementary schools that go to Camp America Day, but Seiler's the only one we have a contract for because the rest, the contracts run through the home and school. The home and schools pay for their kids to go. Seiler's home and school doesn't, so it's parent paid. So when it's parent paid, the contract runs through the district, so that's why we see a contract for that school and not the rest of the elementary schools. The last one is LearnWell Educational Services. This is a student placed in a medical facility, and we pay $57 per hour for their educational services while they're in the medical facility. So that's what that contract's for. That's it for contracts. And the next,
It's for one student, you said, like?
yeah, this one's
Okay.
just for one student. We generally have a contract per student. So there may be months where you see 4 LearnWells.
Yeah.
So it's a contract for each individual student.
So that's about 11, is the 11 the number of kids that are, and then it's started one in the year, it says 2024-1. So that's just a student, but is that,
That's just the contract number. Jackie will start at 2024-01 with just
so
numbers and just keep going
just
up.
how
So
many-
it doesn't mean that we have 11 LearnWells.
you
No.
go. But 11.
And they only, she only uses the numberings where there's a kid's name, and so we blank out the kid's name and we put a number in for the kid's name. So.
All right.
Yeah, the next one, so this is our 24-25 bids that we will do in-house. Music instruments and equipment, art supplies, tech supplies and equipment, transportation supplies and equipment, and facility supplies and services. The rest of the stuff we will do through co-ops. Like, for example, paper we buy through the IU bid. They bid paper for all the schools in the county. So there's a lot of stuff the IU bids. So we'll jump on their co-op. They'll do the bidding as a, and we'll get efficiencies of scale. Tires for our buses, we buy them through that process. But these are the bids that we'll do in-house.
So the IU doesn't support it, or just,
They do some of these also, but there are some of these that there are certain things we want. The next item on the list is RFP for legal services.
Yeah, there's something I had added. We found out that the last contract we had was in 2018, when it started, and I think it's, my idea was to see what else is out there. Certainly Siemens is welcome to bid too. It's not like a fire or anything, but I kind of want to see what else is out there, and we should review all contracts every
So that's my first question, because I'm confused by what prompted this. Are we going to just get bids on every contract we have?
No, but not every year, or this was 6 years ago or something.
It doesn't make sense to me. I'm just so curious what is motivating this to, we have a really good working relationship for 6 years. Somebody who doesn't charge us travel time has done an exceptional job for us. I believe works great with the administration. Why we kind of reinvent the wheel? I mean, you own a business, I own a business, like a good relationship with a vendor and quality is worth more than money sometimes. I know it was brought up about how far,
They
Mike
charge
works. He
for
doesn't
travel.
charge us for travel, so that, wouldn't play into it. Like, do we interview like new cabinet members every 3 years and just see if there's like something cheaper out there?
I always check on every service I buy, every once in a while.
You say it again?
Yeah, on anything you buy, if you're outsourcing it, you check it out every once in a while. That's my opinion. I want to hear from everybody else too, to see if we proceed.
What does, Angelo, how do you feel about it? I mean, I know you've only been here 6 months, but you've worked with Mike, I guess.
Well, in my dealings with our solicitor, they've been positive, efficient, in the legal services provided, but it's the solicitor for the school board, so in my daily interactions, they've been favorable.
I would say that I would agree with looking at other firms just to see what they can offer us. I understand he's been working with us for 6 years, and it's not that he can't bid also, but to see what are other things that other firms can offer. I mean, looking at how we are with the budget, what if we have another firm that is giving us the same, except maybe giving us, it's less cost for us. I don't see what's wrong. We're not saying that we're going to not be using the service that we use now, but I think that it just makes sense to see what else is out there. And if it ends up being that he's still the best, well, there's no
I
harm
guess I'm not
done.
sure how we would determine who's the best. I mean, I know we had some really bad issues with the attorney before Eckerd Peters. We ended up firing them. We got the district into just a big mess. So how are we gonna determine other than price? Because they were cheaper, but they cost us a lot more money because we ended up in a disaster. So how do we determine, without a history with somebody, we know that they're trustworthy and they've done a great job for us? I think that's just a really risky, of all things, especially with the solicitor. But then I guess my next thing is, then should we do it for site logic? Should we do it for just anybody and just see, hey, can we get anything cheaper? And I don't know that that's.
Some expressed their concern with the council, so I put it on there and discussed it. That's what I want to hear from them.
Could you just talk up a little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry, I said I put it on the agenda just so we could discuss it. If people are against it, then we don't go forward with it. I mean, I'm not making this decision.
No, I
This is for
understand that.
everybody, and to me, I would go out and see what's out there. It doesn't really cost us that much. We have to review the proposals. Maybe we get a better price, maybe we don't, and then we go from there.
Well, the decision should not be based on price.
I agree with that. Well, maybe he would come back
I
with
mean,
it.
you'll know, as a private sector individual, price doesn't determine
I
everything.
understand.
Service does. And the key is the service, and we've got an excellent service from Mike and his staff.
I don't disagree with that.
And
I'm just bringing it up because other
Okay.
people,
my personal opinion is we don't need to do an RFP.
okay, that's what I'm.
Well, I just look at it that there hasn't been a contract in place in, what was it, since 2020.
Wasn't much.
And yeah, there wasn't really anything established as a contract, and I think it's not us doing due diligence for the district and for our constituents to not revisit any contract that's.
Well, I guess that's my question then, we'll just do it with every contract.
Well, there's no contract
We
on,
don't have a contract for special ed right now,
and we discussed
huh?
We could bring that
discussed
up.
doing one for that.
I think we have a contract with Everett Seaman, don't we, right now?
It's a,
We don't have a
Pretty
we have no
you said that,
contract
right?
with
We have an engagement.
special.
engagement letter. It wasn't a
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah, there's not an actual contract, so there's not even a contract really to speak of with Eckerd, which I think,
But I guess I'm saying, is that the issue? Is that the concern? I just don't see price shopping when, like Bob said, we have
I'm
good
not saying
service.
price shop. I don't know what experience, I don't know, all I know is what we have. I don't know what's out there. And maybe we're missing something. Maybe we're not.
Hold on, okay.
There you go.
You got on speaker, you're ready to go.
Okay, and I'm sorry if some people have answered, it gets choppy, to the RFP, but I have a couple questions, because this is nothing that, y'all ran on during your campaign. There was only the comment, Ron, in your president's report, was a little blip of looking at this, so I guess I'm confused on a couple things. How did it even come to consensus to be brought onto the agenda, as well as you're always someone who says, you value admin recommendation. This is not recommended by the district. Then where also I'm confused is if what some of you have been saying is to just see what's out there, and we haven't looked into this since 2018. Where is the same concern for the fact that we do not currently have a contract for our special ed attorneys? So to me, it's not the same degree. So to me, it seems like there's a deeper reason, and that's why I question the motive as to the reason why this is being brought to the table at this time. So I'm not sure if Ron, if maybe you could give some more clarity to that.
I'm not sure. I don't quite understand your question. Could you repeat
Okay, I'll back
one
up.
at a time?
This is not anything that you ran on when you guys ran for your campaign, and there was no consensus, to my knowledge, to put this even on the agenda for discussion.
Well, we don't usually go to a consensus to put things on a discussion for committee.
Okay, well,
So
typically
that's,
then, if
anybody has
the
that.
district recommended, but this is you recommending it.
I
And this is
recommended a
something that you
discussion of
said
it.
before that you wanna go with district recommendations, so why now are you recommending this?
Because some people on the board expressed dissatisfaction with our current council.
Can you expand
Okay,
on
so
that? I
I'm
guess
asking
that's what we're,
anyway,
I'm
so
getting
then
to.
I'll
Without
just
knowing
that.
that there's any dissatisfaction, it seems strange
So
to
it's worth
just start.
discussing.
Yeah, I guess that, what were the concerns? What is that's what I think the piece
No one's
that's
ever,
missing.
besides your
So-
comment, Ron, no one's ever mentioned any other concerns at any other time, to my knowledge.
Okay.
So there were things, I mean, obviously, the campaign is the campaign, and what we're in here, we wanna do what's right for the district. But there were things we talked about around fiscal responsibility, and that these legal bills have been creeping up over the past couple of years. So there was concern around that we should be reevaluating our solicitor from the fiscal perspective of it. Now,
But fiscally, sorry, I'll let you finish.
well, so, I mean, I know the elephant in the room, but, I do think that Mike maybe got saddled with some of the decisions that the board made that the public wasn't happy with. And not everyone knows how to separate the two things, but it's the position that we're in as a board right now, that we need to address some of these things. And whether it's clarifying some of the things that have happened, or it's, talking through, do we look for a new solicitor? But there is an unhappiness with the representation.
But
Because
that's,
of the
you're not being
bills?
specific, you need to get specific.
The bills are
Here's-
part of it.
Well, be specific, which bills specifically, because again, a lot of it comes down to the RTKs, which we've had to pay, the regionalization bill that we've had to pay to go to court, that was from some of those very same people complaining about the legal fees. So to say that it's just from the previous board and then to say it's due to being fiscally
I think
Well,
Jordan
hold on.
can.
I just-
don't really wanna go into that.
Yeah, just to back up
We're doing
to-
what's right for the business, and
Yeah.
what our opinions are our opinions. And
But it's
if,
not district recommended.
that's
This
true,
is what
that's
you're
true,
saying
but
is
this
what
is
you
something
think
the
is right,
board,
which
I
you
brought
gave
up
a
to.
lot of grief to the previous board for doing what they felt was right, so why is it okay?
But this is the board solicitor, correct?
Yeah, this is the decision of the board. If people don't want to do it,
But I
then that's
haven't
fine.
heard that decision. The only time I've ever heard it was during your president's speech.
Yeah, this
Not
is
from
only a
any
discussion
other
about
board
it.
member.
This is only a
So
discussion.
how do we bring the
I
discussion
think,
forward then?
I think that the legal bills, unfortunately, thousands of people argue on social media and like one comes to the meeting, you know, maybe more at a regular heated board meeting, is the community doesn't, so it's got out there, our bills are so high. Most people in the community don't understand. We spent $160,000 on 2 people's RTKs. We spent $80,000 on the regionalization lawsuit. Mike had to go defend the district, you know, he had no choice. We spent money on, you know, the library R2K. Again, definitely not Mike's fault, not the district's fault, but that's several $100,000 there. People don't understand, they don't know, and now it's just, oh my gosh, our bills are so high. Well, our bills are so high because we really were like under attack as a district, and Mike just had to go out and defend. He has to answer every RTK. If somebody puts in 57 RTKs, we gotta pay to do it. And
We used to answer the ones that require legal review. We used to answer the ones that require legal review, correct? Not all.
well, I know the ones that required it were $160,000 just last year, and that was just by 2 people, 2 individuals together. So, you know, most people don't understand that, and I guess.
Well, I would just like to hear from everybody. Part of the things with Robert rules, we go around, everybody kind of gives their
Well, let her
input. So,
finish. If she's not finished, she should be able to finish.
well, when
the
she's
call.
done, I just want to, just so we don't jump back in, I'd just like to give everybody a chance.
No, I agree. It makes more sense now because what wasn't told to us until just a couple minutes ago is people on the board expressed dissatisfaction.
So,
My point is not knowing that and knowing that in 6 years, he's done a great job for the district. You'd be like saying, Sean's done a great job, but why don't we just interview other business administrators and just see if we find somebody that is a little bit cheaper? We could be in debt in 5 years. I think it's a really risky thing, especially with some of the lawsuits we're in the middle of. Getting somebody we don't know, we don't have a relationship with, I think is, without a solid reason, I don't understand it.
is anyone else?
I had intimate knowledge, excuse me for a second,
No, absolutely.
with the JOC and Mike, and looking at the removal of our executive director. He handled the whole Go Tech Schools scenario from start to finish. He cut us a break on price, and then he turned around and he defended us well, and we won a lawsuit. It's back in federal court now. Mike didn't do anything wrong. It's the individual that we took to court is now trying to resue us for additional dollars. But Mike handled the situation extremely well, very professional. He had numerous hours into that project, and he just basically wrote them off. And my concern is that we've got numerous cases right now. We need to have Mike on board, working these cases to finalize them. And I don't feel comfortable with the fact that we've got someone that we've worked with for the past 6 years. And he's done a very good job for us. We're just gonna make a blatant statement and say, there are things that he's done. And, you know, Ron, you don't like things, you wanna know exactly what they are. I haven't heard what the thing means.
Has anyone reached out to him, like Leah, have you reached out to Mike specifically with some of the concerns?
No. I've just been working with Mike on some more policy things.
I will say one other thing about Mike, and I don't know, you know, the specific reasons or the concerns, but I do know you guys campaign strongly on not being politicized. I worked with Mike 26 months. I could not tell you if he's a Republican or Democrat. He's given me legal advice or told me, and I've gone completely against what I want to hear. And he always tells you the law, and you never know his opinion.
I agree.
Like even the bathroom policy, I have no idea what Mike thinks is right. He just tells us legally what we can or can't do, what he should, you know, you guys have been in executive session. I'll say, I don't like this, but this is the legal advice I have to give you. I think he's very, very unbiased and fair. I just don't know why. I think those are hard qualities to find in a lawyer, to be honest. Really hard qualities, actually. Not sure about that.
I mean,
I
I
have
was,
another comment, unless, I agree with you, Ron, I want everyone to have a chance to speak, so I don't want to cut anybody off again, it's hard for me to hear if it's choppy.
I think Christine was about to talk, hold on.
Okay.
so there was a lot that I was not in the loop on last year. It is what it is. But I would be concerned moving forward if we didn't clearly define a rubric or what Ricky touched on, you know, how do you evaluate someone's tenacity to fight for the board, or, you know, those soft, sometimes intangible qualities that you can't understand on paper. So I don't know if that's working through with you, like we did with our superintendent search, but I don't have a good sense of how, you know, if you're gonna devote the level of effort to interview people, evaluate contracts, how would we come to a decision? So that's unsettling for me right now.
How we would decide.
You're back.
What criteria we
Yeah.
would, you know, identifying what's important to us.
Right, because it is more than price.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things that would go into the decision.
Success rate. Anybody else? No one has an opinion. I don't think we have. Not really want to move forward with this if we have no interest in it.
I see no harm in moving forward, just at least getting requests. I mean, it's,
I mean, I, for one, I didn't want to interject. And he's done a good job for us too.
You think Mike has done a good job? Yeah.
I think the reason this became an issue was more that what the public sees in his image is different than the service he provides. And I've explained that to a lot of people. He works for us, so it doesn't make everybody happy in the public all the time. But, I mean, I agree with Ricky too. I mean, he did a good job for us.
But I think
I'm
that's,
fine not doing it if nobody else really
I think
seems
that's
too
part of it.
interested in it.
I think it's part of it is also how someone presents themselves professionally, not just to us, but to the community. So if they're not presenting well to the community, that also affects them. Like if you have a student up there that's talking and you're interrupted by the solicitor, that's intimidating. And I think that speaks a lot also, because the solicitor we see or you've seen for the 2 years isn't necessarily the solicitor that I saw as a community member. So I think that also comes into play, even though I understand, and he's been very great when we talk to him and very forthcoming, which is wonderful for us. But as the community, I feel like that also needs to be that sense of professionalism that I don't feel that was there. So I do think that it is, I personally think that it would be our due diligence. Like I said, he could come up, he could be the only one that bids, and then that's fine. Or we could bid with other firms and he could still be the one that comes up on top. And I agree with Christine not knowing how to do that, but doesn't mean we're fearful of not knowing, but doesn't mean we should stop because of that. So I think that we should put it out there. Why it's up is my understanding is the contract expires in July. So I think that's why it's.
I think it's a year old. It just renewed.
Or in a way, there's no contract, so
No,
I'm not sure.
No,
Okay, well.
either one can impact.
Okay, so that's my view on saying why I think we should move forward with it.
well, and I think some of the things that the community has seen, are unfortunately things that are privileged that only we know. So, you know, it's hard for the community to accept and understand some of these things because they don't see the behind the scenes things that were executive session issues or attorney-client issues. So I do think it's a perception issue, and it's a request for proposal. It's not us saying that we have to take anything. And at the end of the day, it doesn't even have to be, I mean, unless I'm wrong, it doesn't have to be the lowest bid number, right?
No.
We could still take Mike at a higher bid number than everybody else if we feel that whoever's proposals don't match up to what we're looking for. I think it's due diligence to be able to get proposal numbers. And I mean, I agree with the special ed lawyer. You know, if there's no contract, we should do our due diligence and do an RFP for that one as well.
I hear what you're saying, but, so I think we've gotten 2 emails, and just snow day tomorrow, people are complaining. People are gonna complain no matter what we do. And because we do know what Mike's like and that he does a good job and he is fair and gives us sound legal advice, to rock that boat because the community member doesn't understand, like, he is representing us, and you'll all end up on the phone with him at some point in the next 2 years saying, don't talk about this, don't do that, don't answer this email. So we're gonna potentially jeopardize that because 2 people in the community so far have emailed and they think he was rude. It's interesting that you had that perception as a community member, because I always thought he was equal to like everybody in the audience. I mean, it got wild sometimes, and he would say like 3 or 4 times, please, what, but I never felt like he was rude to, but I was up there, so maybe it was different from the audience. If anything, I thought he was like extra friendly with people who made it very clear they didn't like him, but, I don't know, I guess we'll see what everybody.
But we really put him in a really difficult position when it comes to the PR issue. He was leading the charge for us at those board meetings. He was taking the brunt of all the comments. I think you're never gonna make everybody happy. But I think he handled the meetings extremely well, that we were able to get through in so many hours. But he did a good job in working with the community. I mean, I remember situations during the COVID scenario where people came in and raved and screamed and yelled at us, and Mike was the one that was the calm one up front that was able to bring our audience back into fold. You don't find that in all attorneys. A lot of attorneys don't have that ability to be hard, to be strong, and he'll back off, and I've watched him back off on numerous occasions with different individuals that wanted to make comments. So I can understand how the community might get a little upset over it, and I'm gonna be real direct. He's a great attorney. You gotta grow up a little bit, folks. I mean, you're not gonna get everyone to stand up here and just say, kumbaya. This is a real world. He's looking at it from the support of the school district. He wanted to make sure that all decisions are made in the right venue for the school district. I think he's done a great job for us. I don't think it's necessary to do an RFP because of community perception.
But that's who we're here to serve, as the community. So if community perception is for us to do an RFP, and it's not just 2 people sending emails. I've had multiple conversations across the community with people up and down my street who have not been happy with things that they've been seeing, and whether or not it's accurate to say, they're looking at the legal bills and they're not happy with it. I mean, both sides of the political spectrum, people on my street who've complained to me personally about it. So we, as a board, are here to serve the community, and if the community's not happy with it, then that's us doing our due diligence to do an RFP.
So let's walk through this. So to appease the community, we do this. It's gonna be a lot of work for the IU, for us. I mean, the interview process is like crazy long. I think we were here at 12:30 multiple nights this summer, and we were interviewing for superintendent. So we go through that, and then who do we hire that appeases the community? Because to serve the community, we're protecting taxpayers. We have a really good solicitor who does his job well for the community. So in the end, we go through all that work, and guaranteed half the community's upset no matter what we do. So it's really now, I feel like, so then we're just kind of playing a game, like, okay, let's go through this big long process to appease the community. even though we already know, we have a great lawyer.
But we've done our job.
Anything else
At
is
that point, we've done our job.
by interviewing.
We've done an RFP and we've done our job to that point, because that's what the community's asked us to do.
Well, how many people in the community really asked us to do that?
I've had
We've got a lot of
number
voters
people.
in this community.
I've
I
had a
haven't
number of
seen,
people.
I mean, no one on my block.
It's like
not
a
my
very
block,
familiar
and says,
conversation, it's
do
just
an
flipped
RFP.
now.
Right, we just
Right?
go back and forth.
No, but it's the situation is flipped. So again, I think like the politics part of it, no one really likes, but it doesn't like disappear overnight either. And there is like, and for lack of a better word, PR, the board needs to be doing now to kind of show like how we're working moving forward. But I understand what you're saying, because I felt that way about a lot of stuff last year. Like, what, 8 parents emailed and were taking crack lights by. Like we could go through the list of stuff. And so like, I'm not interested in doing something to be vindictive or to like prove a point, but I do feel like, and maybe it's just an unfortunate situation for Mike right now, but he is heavily aligned with some of the tougher things that happened in the last couple of years. And whether the public's able to pull that apart or not could be something maybe we all work on, because again, I'm not saying Mike should be fired. It's nothing like the situation of the previous solicitor, that there were major issues with him and he had to be completely let go. But also I believe Mike was hired because he was the interim attorney, and even after all the other attorneys were interviewed, they're like, well, we've been working with Mike and they aren't like he's doing a better job than we think any of these guys could. And maybe that will be the situation again. You know, like I don't think I know I'm not willing to say like Mike needs to be fired at all. Like I said, I've had very positive experiences working with him. I've learned a lot since I've been up here. We've all been talking to the community about like what the solicitor does with relationships to the board, but that doesn't make all of this go away.
But you haven't reached out to ask them some of those concerns, so that would have been great to have, I feel like, in your back pocket when speaking to the community. So maybe moving forward, like, you know, after this meeting, that might be a good first step with some of those concerns, and then maybe there'd be clarity around that, as well as, you mentioned that he was aligned, but Mike was not aligned. Mike would, you know, like the board creates policy,
Yeah.
and Mike advises us on that, so he's giving us the law. He's not going with what he aligns with. He's giving us his advice, and there were times where we disagreed with his advice, you know what I mean? And as a board, obviously you can do that, but at the same time, he's not aligning with it. He's
Yeah, I know, I understand that. I'm saying in the public's eye, he is aligned with it though.
Well, look,
You know?
But that is not, I mean, I don't see how, I know a solicitor's giving you advice based upon the law. If he was not, then there would be a way more, I don't know, there'd be way more gusto to look for a new solicitor if it was just because they were aligned, you know what I mean? So again, I feel like that is not enough from a community perspective to just say, oh, it's just because he looked aligned. Like that would mean that he's just saying, going along with what we're doing and not giving us advice based upon the law. Like that would be a bigger problem, and I could understand that. But another part I wanted to comment on was back to the RFP itself. In the qualifications and requirements, who, you know, again, this was not district recommended or admin recommended. Under that section, it says, bullet point number 2, it says labor and employment laws, including laws relating to discrimination, labor negotiations, grievance and arbitration, and certification requirements. There's that, okay? And then underneath, there's another added one, and it further goes into discrimination. Who, like that part, in my opinion, the second bullet covers the discrimination piece. Who added the third bullet point where it talks about the Title IX and discrimination due to gender? And religion? Who added that part?
Tony, what was that came from the IU. We just put our name on it and sent it out, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we asked for help from the IU, they provided a letter, and,
So you requested an RFP, and this is what they came with. Nobody suggested from your end specific things that you wanted within the RFP, because usually that's what the IU will do as well. Like, you know, what are you looking for? some
No, they didn't do
more
that.
than others. They just blanketly gave this RFP.
Yes,
So Ron, did you say we're a year ahead? Or this, his contract engagement
it
up in
goes,
July?
no, it doesn't. It goes on until either side. There's no end of contract.
Got it.
It expired a long time ago, like a year agreement, but it renews automatically.
I'd at least like to see the new board work with him a little bit longer before we start this process, if that's the process we're gonna do.
I think that's a good point.
I think it offers us an interesting path forward. I mean, any district level employee has a contract. At the end of that contract, we do a performance review. Are they doing well? Mr. Barrios signs a 3-year contract with us. At the end of his 3-year contract, we make a decision. Do we choose to continue to have him be in our service of our district, or do we seek other options? And I think maybe part of the issue here is that for many of these contracts, we don't necessarily currently have that type of a system in place. So we don't have a system in place where we take a good hard look at somebody like our district solicitor and make a decision and do a performance review. Are they effectively doing their job? Are we pleased with their service? And then we make that decision. Yes, we would like to continue to contract with that individual. Maybe, or no, we would like to see what other options are out there. And I think that it is good to do our due diligence with that, but we have to therefore have a process in place. And I think that's missing. It's clearly missing with our district's special ed attorney. It's clearly missing with our district's solicitor. So I think maybe the question becomes, before we start to deal with doing an RFP, is let's figure out as a board, as a group, what is our best practice? And when we review the services of independent contractors that we are contracted with, to make sure that it is still in the best interest of our district, to make sure that it is still in the best interest of our taxpayers, to make sure that it is still in the best interest of our students, to continue to contract with that service, or if it is time for us to seek a better option. And I think that might be our better starting point.
So
Is what is our period of evaluation for these types of a contract in the first place, or do we just make a contract and then never look at it?
I'll jump in first. I just want to say that I've talked to Mike a couple times and he's given some solid advice. By all means, just like Carolyn said, just from being on the floor, the perception from the floor was entirely different than being behind the scenes, like being behind the curtain. I've gotten some good advice from Mike. I still go back to any contract that we have that we engage in. We should have a revisit period, regardless of what the contract is, whether it's 2 years or 4 years. I think to just let them continue on unabated isn't us doing a good service for the district. It's just, I think that any contract that we enter into should have definitive parameters and say that we're going to revisit it at a certain time and reevaluate it.
I agree with that. Look, I don't see it as a clear. I think we should just continue to discuss it and take it off the agenda. Because I'm not unhappy with Mike. It seems like we should. I like the point of saying, get to know him first before you make a decision. We have worked with him. I think all 4 of us like what he did. So.
But maybe this could help twofold, because I really like that idea of doing an evaluation, because then it could be a kind of more open, it's not like client attorney privilege sort of stuff. We're not talking about school board business. We're just talking about what we expect from a solicitor. We put it out there, what our criteria was, how Mike measured against it, and now it does make it something that's less nebulous for people, I think, to understand. If we then decide we're like, all right, it's good, we don't need an RFP, then they would understand why.
Can I ask quickly, do we have any other services where we have an open-ended contract? Like, look, we see everything every year.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that it is weird that we don't look at it.
Yeah, the solicitor contract, I would, now for example, the next one we have to talk about is the auditor. It's on a 4-year contract. The solicitor contract, I would be careful putting it on a number of years,
Okay.
because if you put a solicitor on a 4-year contract and a year into it, you're not happy, you have 3 years of misery. Whereas if it's an open-ended contract, in 6 months, if you're not happy, you can do an RFP at any time and do that evaluation.
We're just thinking, like, board
Evaluation.
procedure.
You could do the evaluation, I mean, you can choose as a board to evaluate your solicitor every 6 months, every year,
That's kind of what I was
whatever
getting
you
to.
want to do, and when you decide that evaluation isn't good, you know, you're not happy any longer, then you pull the trigger and send out an RFP. But if you put a specific term on that, then you're kind of stuck. Like, for example, for me, if I'm on a 5-year contract, at the end of 2 years, if I'm not doing good, you're going to evaluate me. I'm going to have a poor performance review. I'm going to be put on a PIP, and if I don't do my job right,
Mhm.
you have just cause to end my contract and fire me, right? But you know, when you put a contract in for a professional service like that, you're pretty much stuck with that. I believe you're pretty much stuck with that. If you, or you're going to have a struggle, you know,
Agreed.
getting out of it.
I
So
think, I mean, even the one that we have, the open one that we have right now, still, I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's still, we have the right to terminate with 60 days notice, correct?
absolutely, absolutely.
So I think that it goes back to just being able to, board norms, going back and being able to review it
Absolutely.
every so many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still being able to do that
Yes.
60-day notice.
Right, absolutely. And you can set that schedule up as you see fit as a board, and then when you're ready to do an RFP, you just do the RFP.
In
You know,
interest
you're not set with a timeline.
interest of time, I think, I'm fine if we take it off the agenda for the board meeting and continue this discussion. And I like the idea of evaluation, because we should have something up there. I'm getting feedback from everybody, because we're the ones who interact with it, as does the district.
Right.
Make sure that everybody's on board with
Right.
the quality of support.
And you'll have the same thing with the special ed attorney. You have a new director of student support services coming in. That gentleman might wish to work with someone else. And you have the ability as a board to end that relationship at any time and move on. However, if it was a term contract, you wouldn't have that ability. And the other thing with this is the IU will not be involved. This is going to be on us to do this process. I don't believe they will get involved with us in the solicitor search. So it'll just be, you know, the 9 of you and Mr. Barrios deciding on who that.
So just to be clear, we're tabling the RFP for now,
Yeah.
with
It
the
won't be on the
understanding that it won't be on the agenda, and we will work on some type of evaluation tool.
I like that.
I like
To be
Jordan, did you hear
used
that?
every X number of years or something.
Sure, I mean, everybody who interacts with Mike should ask
You there,
them.
do you understand?
Sorry, so, I mean, you don't have to repeat it out again, because I couldn't really hear Bradley, but I heard
Sorry.
say, like, you like the evaluation, so I can get information,
Apologies,
if that's
couldn't
what the
hear.
majority wants to do, I can get that information later. Like,
Yeah.
not majority, we can't vote, but consensus.
Yeah, so we're tabling the RFP and just talking about how to do just like a regular evaluation of the solicitor. And then if obviously doesn't meet what we're expecting, then an RFP would be something that's put in place. But we'll start with just talking about how do we want to evaluate our solicitor
Okay.
on a regular basis.
This one will be a little easier, I guess?
Yeah, so the next one is our, the audit services. It is on a 4-year contract, which is this current audit that they're finishing up is the last year. So we will need to have an auditor in place for the fiscal year ending, you know, June 30th, 2024. This proposal, or the proposal that we put in place with the audit firm we have now, has a extension. You can extend it as the board if you just want to continue with the same company. The only thing that would change would be what their price is. But I have brought you a request for proposal that, 4 years ago, the board decided that they wanted to go out for proposals, and we probably got proposals back from 4 firms and settled on the firm we have now, which is Barbicane. And again, that was a contract that was put in place before COVID. It's $19,000 a year and I would estimate that we will pay under a new contract at least double that amount.
If we,
Regardless, if
you
we,
can't extend this time, or you can.
we can, all the terms except for price extend, they get a chance to
So then you
change.
have to bid it out, don't you?
You don't. It's a professional service. It's not a bid, it's an RFP.
Well, I understand that, but if they're gonna raise the price
They're-
substantially, then
They're gonna, they would have to raise the price.
Below market? Yeah.
Do you
Well, I
have an
understand.
issue with, do you like the service? Because I would say the same thing. If we have a good relationship and a good service.
well, it's an audit too, it's different than, to me, that's different than legal advice. I mean, an audit, a lot of auditors do the same thing. But, yeah,
I don't know if I would make that statement. All auditors are not alike, Joe. I'll give you that.
well, I understand that, but we know who's good, who other people are using, so we can narrow it down to good quality people. But, I mean, if they're, how much is the total contract?
It's $19,000 a year.
That's it.
Yeah, and that was, like I said, it was put in
Okay,
place
understand
before,
what's bigger.
it was put in place before COVID. And it was their first contract in Penridge, and they were very aggressive to get in here. So,
And they're doing satisfactory work,
satisfactory work.
bother you a lot, or do they seamlessly audit it? Do you
See
think
all the
it's?
gray hair he's got now, Ron?
Really, anyway.
An auditor's purpose was to come back with something.
So do you not want to,
What's that?
do you not want to shop it around?
I don't know where, I mean, you know, if I felt that they could come back at a relatively price that was close to what we're at now, then I would say no,
Okay.
that's not shopping around, but
Can we
I think
ask
it's
them?
gonna be all over. I think it's,
So you don't have their price
I
yet?
don't have it.
Should we ask them before we
Yeah.
put on our
Tell them, it's a good price.
I can ask them.
I trust your judgment on what should be paid.
Yeah, I think that's a great,
Okay.
you gotta ask first.
Gotta be a little less for them, because they know the whole deal, so they don't have to come in and reorder.
True.
So we're gonna proceed and just see, when do you have to renew this fund?
So, we would need auditors in place for the fiscal year that's ending this year, of course. You know, this spring, they're gonna start planning their, scheduling their work for the summer and so forth, so I wouldn't wanna wait too much longer to put it out to the market if we're gonna
So-
go out to market.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
So would you wanna put this on the agenda, just go with, for the board meeting here, or?
If we're gonna, yes, I think we need to do something. We either need to vote to renew them, or we need to put an
Well,
RFP.
we don't know the price,
But we can find that
If
out.
you can find out the price before then, we can easily, I think, anybody disagree?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's surprising a little,
It is. Like I said, it was pre-COVID pricing, and
That's why I wanna learn a new
These-
one, just in case.
these folks held to their price since COVID, and I mean, they put this bid right before COVID, and their prices have to be,
Hopefully they-
everybody's prices went up, and they've stuck to their contract, so I give them credit for that. So,
Well, so you'll find out what the one is, if it's outrageously more, then we can still go out to bid if we need
yes,
to. Okay.
that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. I'll be in communication with you as soon as I hear back.
And what was the last one, was change of deposit?
Yeah, so Keystone Collections collects the major revenues, our earned income tax revenue. We currently have it deposited into our Pliget account. We want to change that from putting it in our Pliget account to our QMB account. And they require us to get board approval to make that change. It's a security thing. I know what they're doing. It's for security reasons. They want to make sure the board knows and the board approves where we're depositing the money. We used to put it in the Pliget account because that's where our bond issue or our debt service payments were made from for the issues that just ended this year. So we no longer need to put it into that account. So we're gonna put it into our QMB account, which is our local depository, and then we will invest it from there into our investment accounts, right? So we're just kind of cleaning up the path of where we put that money. So, but we have to have board approval for that. They want to see a board motion to approve that change. That's all that.
All right. Moving right along. So, Bob?
That was just fine.
We have a situation with SiteLogics, and I believe that they are not making a presentation today.
That is correct. They have no new information to share. We're just tabling their presentation until next month.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed it wasn't up, so I leave.
Hoping for some last minute information that did not happen.
Okay, that's fine. There's nothing important that you know about.
No, spare them the time.
And this was also textbook stuff, or this is?
No, it's
No, this is
That's
just a
Not
text.
they were, okay, got it.
Good question.
All right, next on the list is the Penridge Animal Hospital. I got an email from Ron on May 1st to take a look at the proposal for the Penridge Animal Hospital, which is up on Ridge Road, 263, right across from Markey Park. They're looking at a piece of ground which is a half acre, which is owned by the school district. It's a wooded lot, and they would like to put a parking facility out there for their animal hospital. Ron gave it to me, my first assignment I made for myself was to look at the contract. I did not present the contract to our solicitor. I look at enough of these during the day that I wanted to go through it myself and actually make my own comments on it. And there are numerous things in this contract that I think are really detrimental to the school district for the land we own. I think rent is an issue. I'm looking at use and third-party assignees and subletters and designees. There's some other language in here on eminent domain. We had some issues about assignment and subletting, and I didn't particularly like that at all. Subordination of a lease, that didn't bode well for me at all. So at that point, I said, wait a minute, let's take a look at this from a standpoint of, it's a half an acre of ground. It's on 563. Can we get some form of knowledge from the community, the real estate community, as to what a half an acre on Ridge Road with no amenities is worth? I believe $150 a month is not the proper number, but I don't have the ability to determine whether it should be $300 a month or $700 a month or $5,000 a month. So I did my due diligence. I spent a couple days talking to the township first. I wanted to find out where the township was. I talked to Mr. Hubbard, and Kelly was very good to give me his understanding of the situation. I talked to 1, 2, 3 real estate brokers in the area, local, 2 outside brokers. The one fellow from Doylestown, he's done a great job of different projects. And these are all, by the way, they're not industrial, which is my bailiwick. These are all not residential, but retail folks that are just dealing with retail properties. The one fellow, Frank, couldn't give me any information. He says, Bob, I do retail, but I'm doing existing buildings, blank grant for half an acre, which has no facilities to it. He said, I really can't tell. I don't have an issue.
What's it zoned for?
It's zoned for the school district, period.
Oh, just, okay, that was on.
That's all this is, just under the school district guys.
Okay.
I have talked to another local real estate broker. He has not gotten back to me. I've reached out to a real estate developer that's known in the area, does extensive work in the industrial and very big on building on raw ground, buying raw ground, sitting on raw ground, making it available. I finally had to cut him off because he started talking about, well, I mean, you got a half an acre, you could be looking at $100,000 an acre, so now you're at 50, let's lose. I said, wait a minute, stop. I said, that's not the way to go. This is just a vacant piece of ground. I said, we really need to think about this for the long term. So I came up with the conclusion after banging on too many doors and making phone calls. We might be better off if we go back to the Admiral Hospital and ask them to give us an appraisal of the property. Not us to spend the money for an appraisal. Have them do their own appraisal. At least we'll have a comparable as to what the ground might and might not be worth. To me, if we don't do that, I think the citizens of this fine community would have a reason to come back and smack us in the head and say you've made a mistake.
We've also offered to help out with textual too, so that could be part of the deal, right?
Well, and I talked to our fine leader over here, and Mr. Marius and I talked about the fact that we might be able to use our 501c3 that's associated with the school district, not of the school district, and use the 501c3 where in lieu of, let's say we decide we're gonna charge you $1,000 a month, just a raw number. 50% of that goes to the 501c3. You can use that as a tax deduction on this federal return, so they can use a tax deduction on their federal returns. The dollars can go into the 501c, and the 501c3 then can turn around and use it to help out students.
But section 709 PA code states that any lease money has to go into the general fund. Right, and then there's also a provision in the state code 751 that really delineates a value. I think it's up to $18,500 of construction costs. Now, I think, it's my understanding, they merely want to clear some trees and add a gravel parking space there.
Yeah, and the township will only have gravel, and then the amount of trees they eliminate is gonna be impacted, because they're more concerned about, and I know the school district is, about impervious surface and runoff.
Correct. And we, in consultation with Kelly and Sean, we've spoken about that as well, that it will throw off our ratio, if you will, of
Impervious surface ratio.
Yes,
Right.
so.
The other piece to that
Yes.
part, Angelo, is that work on the land can only be done by the school district.
Well, that I did not know.
Well, that's a lease, right?
But if we go into a lease, it doesn't,
If you
That's
read,
something from.
if you read,
do we need to go to the
Mike?
solicitor?
that's from Mike's, that's from Mike's
Yeah.
statement. If you,
It's more like, this is an option to sell, or, I mean, we'd like to keep our property, but is.
There's a whole process if we do sell, the judge needs to approve it, it needs to go through unsealed bids, public auction.
yeah, you need three options: unsealed bids, public
Sealed bids,
auction,
excuse me.
or a private sale. But a private sale has to be approved by the courts.
No one's gonna buy it, it's just a half acre, you could
Right.
put a house on, you can't do anything.
Right. But if we lose the half acre completely out of our tract of land, it lowers our total land and it's gonna impact our impervious surface. And we're right up against the line, or the limit, aren't we?
Right, it would not be beneficial to sell off the land, because it would reduce it would limit us of what we can do with our property.
And it's not just a half acre, it is with a half acre chunk of land that we have
Yeah.
around it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just sitting out there by itself.
Yeah.
We
I can
have
put this up
everything.
on the screen, but this is,
Yeah, I was looking at it too. So
Looking at it.
we own all of this.
oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right, we all own around it, right?
Yeah, so it's not just like floating out there a half acre that we
Yeah,
would.
unfortunately, the school code language that Angela's talking about isn't real helpful to us in this situation. And it's one of those situations where no good deed goes unpunished.
So are we
Makes-
out any option?
Makes it
Yeah,
very
I'm not clear what
difficult.
the concerns are besides the monthly rent.
Well, I mean, I want to be able to prove to the general public that we're charging the right dollar amount to
For half
lease
an
the
acre,
ground.
right?
For half an acre.
But it looks like we have to do the work though too. So
Yeah.
that adds to the cost,
Can we not
right?
have them do it?
Any work that's done to
Work.
property that we own must be done by the district and go through the proper process like we would do any type of work. So if it's more than the bid amount, it's gotta go out to bid. So if that work up there is more than what it says in the school code now is 18,000, but that's been adjusted for inflation, it's like 20,000, 22,000. If it's more than that, it's gotta go to bid, and the district has to do the work, I believe is what I read in
So
Mike's.
it takes-
And we pay it, right?
Exactly.
We have to
Well,
pay that, there's a chance that we could recoup that through
Okay, yeah,
our charges to them to use the property, but it becomes, and then the other thing Mike pointed out is when you do this, the land may become taxable. And for real estate taxes, going on with a private lease. So there's a whole lot of stuff to this that, and we just got this from Mike in the last 24 hours. So there's a whole lot more to this tangled up in the school code that makes it sticky.
In the contract as well, the eminent domain which you referenced, I didn't fully understand it because we own the land. So I
Right.
don't understand why that was.
That's probably for the standard thing, I guess.
That's my
Be a lot of
guess.
that standard
Yeah,
language.
yeah. Well, that's where, I mean, I had initially, and again, I initially reached out to Mike just on my concern about leasing the land and then having somebody else do the work. Because I looked at the dollar amount on it, it was like 150 seems substantially low. You know, and I had questions about Separations Act, about prohibited transactions, how does this affect the district? And you know, him and I had a discussion about it, and he had said, you know, as far as this contract goes, he would not suggest moving forward with it. We should take a look at it and rewrite the contract. That it's not in our best favor for us to do it because of, you know, the 18,500, the eminent domain, the lease amount. He also brought up that he's concerned it's a 10-year lease with 5-year terms on it. So there was a lot of different things in it that he had brought up that said, you know, we should probably revisit, and then rewrite.
Right. His concerns with the time frame is that it almost makes it a sale.
Yeah,
Something-
yeah, that's what it was. It in essence becomes a sale
Becomes
because
a
it's such
sale.
a
As-
long term.
He wrote. Trying to remember what he wrote. So I think that if this is truly something the board wants to continue to look at, I think it would be smart to have Mike speak with the board and determine the best way to move forward, because in his message was a sale would be better than a lease, but I'm not sure a sale is good for us.
Well, he doesn't know about the impervious stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but if it impacts the impervious surface, then
Correct. He
it's not
doesn't,
worth it. to
he
the
doesn't
school
know about that part.
Can we look at it?
No,
With Mike,
I'll,
see what-
let me call Mike tomorrow and we'll talk about it and
see what we come-
see what we come up with.
You wanna help we wanna help the community, but it's.
And again, the township is so enthusiastic about helping them out, because if you drive by on during the day, there's cars parked all
Yeah, I
over,
know, it's
they're all over the street. And the township really wants to see that regulated.
They can't do anything behind them?
No, because it's school district property behind them and it goes straight down.
Oh.
It's a ski
okay,
resort.
yeah,
Right, I can say from the veterinary hospital standpoint, this was a starting point. They're very flexible.
Yeah.
This was just a starting point, because we put it on them. We're not paying for anything. You propose all these agreements, and if we want them to do an appraisal, they can't move forward until they complete that, if that's our request. And it's totally up to the board. If this is something you want to entertain, or you could stop it at any time. I think it's good to be a good neighbor if it doesn't impact us for future projects and property values.
And
And this isn't the first time they've been knocking on our door.
Right.
I went to past President Bill Cross and talked to Bill, and Bill goes, they came to us when I was president, and we turned it flat down because of the cost of what they wanted to rent the ground from us. So they understand the situation to a certain degree.
And we told them to go put a proposal together and send it back, you know, so that our solicitor then can look at, because we didn't feel that we should put the burden on this district, on the district to start.
Sure.
So we said, listen, you put something together and send it to us, and then we'll
That's what-
let the board look at it and the solicitor look at it. So that's why you got what you got,
I
right?
didn't know we had done this with them before.
Oh, yes.
This
It's
is
been a
great.
few years ago they came to us with the same question.
And you would, I mean, my suggestion would be that I can have a meeting with, sit down and talk with the doctor about this, and go through the contract and say, these are things that we're gonna have to look at. I mean, I haven't called Mike, because, again, it's my Scottish background, haven't charged me any money to talk to him. But I figured, you know, I could go through the majority of this and pull out what I think needs to be pulled, before we go to Mike. But I think maybe having a conversation with them is the next step, if you wanna.
You can invite them to a committee meeting.
No, I'd rather have it go to their facility, walk around, look at it, feely, touchy type of thing.
Do we own the land all around them, or?
Yes.
We're definitely below them, and
See, I'm not sure about their neighbor to one side, but
They have a
we're
neighbor to the
behind.
side of them, which is, and I don't know the ground next to them is the neighbor. Because the
Right.
neighbor's got a fairly large
Yeah,
shed.
We're on this side and to the left from facing this direction.
Yeah.
But, and again, it's very difficult because you're working with school code and you're working with language that was written in 1949 and generally not updated, unless it has to be updated, right? So it's a very legalese issue that you generally wouldn't see in the real world,
Mhm.
the non-educational world. And leasing school district property generally comes with a building, not just land. So Mike's trying to fit this into law that was written in 1949. That's why he's come back with so many legal hurdles with this process. And the fact that we have to actually do the construction, not them. So to me, at that point,
That's it cut right there.
I read his email as that we have to do it. And maybe I misread it, but certainly I think that we need clarification. You know, you guys need clarification from Mike about, we all do, about what can and can't happen.
Yeah,
And we
okay.
definitely,
We're talking to Mike, is probably
Yeah.
the best thing to figure out if this isn't feasible.
right.
We may,
Okay.
this may be farther we went down the road than maybe before, so maybe that's why we're learning.
Right. And I don't want to lead these folks at the animal hospital down the road and then say, no, this isn't happening. I'd rather
No, we,
figure it out
right,
now.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, with the animal hospital. Next, obsolete items.
We have 4 different lots or items here. The first is Guth Elementary School, and they have a old laminator not working. That one will go to scrap. We have at Bedminster a number of pieces of equipment, some desks, some student desks, student chairs, some filing cabinets, some tables, and some furniture out of the kindergarten rooms that are all old, beat up and poor shape. So that stuff will all be scrapped. South Middle School has 30 combo desks, not needed any longer. They're in good shape, so we'll put those on public surplus. And then Guth Elementary School has their library weeding logs for us, and those all of those books will go on public surplus. And you can see they have them separated into different boxes, and then the reason for the books in those boxes as to why they're being weeded.
I did have a question
Mm-hmm.
about that. So I did see in a lot of it's like population interest and conditions. There are a lot of books on here.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is population interest. Does that mean the books haven't been checked out in a year, 2 years? What is that? Do you know how that they're put on there? Because it just says box 1 and 2 weeded due to population interest and condition of material. But up
Mhm.
top, for example, it'll say condition fair. So I guess I just want to get clarification on if the condition's fair, and then also what's the population interest mean? because you know, a book may not be checked out this year, but possibly next year, and there's a lot of books, and then with taking out this amount of books, are they then going to bring in other books?
Yeah, each of our elementary school libraries has between $5,000 and $6,000 a year to buy new books, and our librarians will go through this process, and then they will buy books to replace these. Some of the times, if it's just a book that's being removed because of condition, we're buying a brand new book to replace that book. If it's not been checked out, if they deem that it's no longer an interest to the kids, and I don't know what the parameters are for that, then they'll buy other things that they believe the kids are interested in, and then they put those in place. So it's trying to turn over, weed out items that are no longer being used or in bad shape, replace them with like items if they're still an item that's used, or if it's an item that's not used, they want to find something that the kids actually want, and they put that in place. So
No, I understand, I guess, because I'm looking at.
the library, this is an elementary.
Yeah.
It's an elementary.
Just the library?
Absolutely, this is the elementary librarian's work, and they do it for, each librarian does it for their library. Yeah.
I guess I could just reach out. I am interested to know what is the interest, because there's some books on here that I feel like I just would want to know. But I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
I'd still like to see.
Any other questions for Sean?
I just still would like to see that some sort of universal, like why is it gone? Like everyone seems to have different forms. If there's,
Right, because here it says, for example, the conditions, if they're going to replace it, it would be poor, but it says fair.
well, maybe, yeah, I mean,
And it's just
Exactly.
for the whole boxes, not
Just
for
take
like
it off.
each book, right?
work on one, same form.
Do we have a rule book or codes or something? No.
I guess maybe for each book they'd be able, I mean, this is a lot of books, so I can imagine if they had to do it, but just to have a better understanding.
Well, it looks like we're down the path we were many moons ago with the books and disposal of books. And we had Dr. Labarczyk actually provide us with a template, I believe, based off of the policy. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we have the reasoning behind it. I guess what we're asking for, Carol, is look at an extended reasoning for removal of books.
I would just have it, I mean, okay.
As opposed to what's on the policy?
Yeah.
I think it's just probably understanding what the different reasons are, right? What are the reasons again?
I think they have weeded due to population interest and condition, some of them. For example, box number 4 is like that and it's fair, and then box number 5, it's specifically due to condition of material because it says poor. So I'm assuming that all those in box number 5 are exactly that.
So technically, population interest is not one of the reasons in the policy. So, I mean, there's infrequent use or,
That's population interest.
yeah.
Yeah. They should
Not
standard-
being used.
They should, since there's a policy, they should use the same code or whatever.
So I guess we should take it back again and make them follow what the policy says, and we'll go from there
Let's see,
with that particular section of books. Any other comments on books? Sean, I hate to do it to you, but we're gonna go back again and do this for the 18th time.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Alrighty. Nothing else is on the agenda. Our next facilities committee meeting is scheduled for March 11th, 2024.
just calling Jordan.
Thank you.
You're welcome, you're on speaker.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Jordan's on speaker, you're welcome. So we're starting personnel, the personnel committee. We're gonna start with the job description updates. Before we start, and Tara's here, which I just have to say, Ms. Mossman has been wonderful with all of my questions. We go through everything, she's so thorough, even up until today. She was answering questions, so I just wanted to let people know that it's wonderful to work with her. In regards, before she gets started, I just wanted to say, with the job description updates, her team has also really been doing a good job in updating people may wonder, why are these descriptions being updated? Some haven't been updated since like 1998. So they are going through certain job descriptions. They have a list, but as people start leaving, then they start looking at those job descriptions also. So she is coming up with sort of something like how we're doing with policy, that these are the policies we're going to be looking at, if that's what we're going to be doing with job descriptions. For example, in the month of March, these are the job descriptions that will be looked at and updated. So they are working on that, and I just wanted to let you guys know why it is that these job descriptions are being brought up at every meeting. So, do you want to start, Tara, with the Director of Student Services?
So the first job description that we have is the assistant data administrator. The assistant data administrator, there weren't many changes to the job description. There were just some verbiage changes. If you look at number 5, it talks about adding as well as user account modifications related to district personnel assignment changes. That was something that was being added to the job description. So they were rewording and expanding the description to include support of current employees' assignment changes. So that's the language that was added. And otherwise, there was just the employee acknowledgement on the back. Does anyone have any questions?
I had a question. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. My question is, I guess I was confused why these job descriptions were on concerning the data, because I'm, like, on the organization chart, we don't have a data administrator, correct? Like, who is the person that holds this job?
So our data administrator is Dan Alexander. And he works with Diane Miller.
Position is not listed in the organization chart.
So on the organizational chart, the directors are listed, but Dan Alexander is under the miscellaneous group. So not all of the positions are listed directly on the organizational chart.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The next job description is the data administrator. Again, minor changes to the language. The only major addition is under the principal function, and it says the position serves as the PIMS coordinator and ensures all PIMS collections are uploaded in a timely and accurate manner. So that was just, it describes the function more accurately. So we added that language, as well as under number 9, it talks about including seating the various testing platforms with roster information. And again, this position sets the testing systems up. It supports on the technical side, but it does not do the analysis of student data results from the curriculum viewpoint. And that's the reason for that addition.
Who does that?
Can I ask again, so for clarification, we have a data administrator and assistant data administrator, and up until recently, we had a data coach, correct, Ben?
The data coach was under the curriculum department, and that position is no longer.
Right. So we had the assistant data supervisor, we have that position as well, correct, currently?
Yes,
Okay,
Where,
thank you.
who do they?
those two positions report to Diane Miller in the technology
Technology.
department.
So who does analyze and interpret student testing data now?
That is under the curriculum department.
Yeah, coaches
Do coaches do that?
do a lot of data analysis.
Well, and
As do
also
some
we have
teachers.
that- We also have that Linkit website as well, which has a lot of the data, it's very easily
Yes.
accessible too, so I believe teachers also look at that data as well.
But they can just see their own.
This is not student data, this
This-
is HR,
Yes,
this is,
Well, it
It's
can
a-
be student data, like a PIMS upload, like at the end of the year, we have a Safe Schools report that we
Okay.
upload, there's
But not
teacher
performance.
evaluation type things that we upload to PDE that they're intimately involved with.
Yes.
okay, but not performance data, right, student performance?
No,
So two different, when we talk data, it's different data.
Yes.
Which is why this was taken out here.
And
It's
it's-
not
Yes,
just
and it's now under the curriculum
Right.
department.
who under the curriculum department.
So it could be the coaches that work directly with Dr. Scheid, as well as the supervisors.
And
as well as principals.
everything has access.
Do they all have access to everything though? Like I thought teachers just have access to their own data. How's that?
Yeah, well, that's where the coaches came in, because they coordinate the whole,
So the coaches do the data.
they do a lot.
Because they could
I
then
think-
say,
That's what they were
they're
telling.
able to see the whole grade.
And they work in conjunction with Dr. Scheid
Yeah.
for data.
Okay.
Okay. Secretary to the Assistant Superintendent. So there were some updates to this job description. Again, a lot of the updates were language updates, changing the title from Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education to Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. This individual no longer supervises and evaluates work-study students or summer help. We also removed number 13 and number 14. So assist the instructional technology coordinator with the processing of purchase orders and the maintenance of technology-related grant funds and allocations and budget records. All of this now falls under the technology department. As well as on the back, number 17, 18, 19 was removed. So 17 and 18 talk about summer help and the 900-hour clerks. That is now held in the buildings. Summer help is overseen by the high school, as well as each building has 900-hour clerks, so they oversee their 900-hour clerks. Assist in the maintenance of the Dimensions Progress Reporting System, that was removed. And assist in the training, help desk, and communication regarding progress reports, including staff, pilot parents, consultant, and technical staff. So the help desk falls under the technology department as well. Does anyone have any questions? We will also be bringing the secretary to the assistant to the superintendent, but we were just giving some time for the new secretary to transition into the position to determine what the job description will entail. The next one is the secretary to the director, the assistant principal / athletic director. So we will be changing the title to align with Mr. Hagan's title. Under number 5, it says complete the weekly payments of officials via arbiter pay along along with any payment documents needed for non-arbiter paid officials. We do not use arbiter pay.
You should be,
We don't use it?
but it's unreal.
I'm sorry, we do use it. We
switched it.
changed, I'm sorry, we switched the payment. Number 8, they're removing process and distribute gold cards, faculty passes, and reserve seating and season ticket orders, including but not limited to initiating correspondence, collecting money, and charting reserve seating. So they're adding create yearly passes and gold cards, along with the creation of events using My School Bucks for digital ticket purchasing by fans.
Is there a reason why it has to be so detailed? This is just a system for providing, which could change.
It could change, and as it changes, then we would update the job
Yeah.
description.
This is very specific.
It is.
It's too specific.
Number 9 was adjusted as well. Number 12, the intramural coaches and all other high school extra duty positions was removed. This position no longer processes payroll for those individuals.
Okay.
Number 17 was being removed. We do not process any other EDR contracts beside the athletics, and this would go through the main office and the high school principal. And then number 18, they do not work with the custodians. The custodians for those types of events would be scheduled through Mr. Harper's department. Does anyone have questions regarding that job description?
I guess I would echo Mr. Fleurs's comments, because on the one description, we took the reporting tool names out, I think, to make it more generic, but here it specifically lists them. Feels like it can create busy work maybe for not a great reason, unless it's, you know, a critical system and they need to know how to operate that system.
So there are in certain departments, I would say that we would want to have those systems listed because
Okay,
they're
sure.
department specific. Where in other departments, they might not be as department specific, or it might be something that each department utilizes.
Okay.
Any questions? The next job description is the math supervisor position. Again, we changed the description of who they report to. They report to the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. There were some additions that were added when you look at the back, page number 9, 10, 11, and 12. This was information that our supervisors worked through adding these job responsibilities to their job description. And they were duties that were not previously listed on their job description.
Why do you take out number 1? I saw that in other ones, I forgot that.
Sure.
You don't want any enthusiasm or?
So we do. As they were reviewing the job descriptions, they just felt like there was more pressing qualifications that should be listed and information in their job description.
But we welcome the
We do.
Yes.
We do.
It's somewhere
That's
else.
part of the hiring process.
It's the unspoken criteria.
Yes. Does anyone have specific questions about the K-12 supervisor of math? The next is K-12 supervisor of reading, English language arts. Again, we updated the individual's title, who they report to. As well as on the back, you'll notice that there were a lot of additions to their job description, and that is just updating duties that were not previously on the job
It's
description.
similar to the other.
It is
Yes.
very, yes. And then we have the K-12 supervisor of science. And that is similar to all of these supervisor job descriptions. They went to the back at the bottom and added all of the responsibilities that they have that were not previously listed. And then we have the K-12 supervisor of social studies. And again, we updated the individual's title whom they report to. And they added 9 through 13 on the back of duties that were not originally on their job description. The next job description that we have is custodian grounds maintenance. This position currently exists in our district as a part-time position. We are requesting the approval to move forward as a full-time position, combining two positions to help assist with the baseball fields during the baseball season. Mr. Harper is here to help talk us through some of that.
Yeah, so last year, I believe it was a board decision to have middle school baseball that we'd never had previously. One of the initial agreements to understand the needs of this addition was to have parents fulfill a majority of the responsibilities. If you're familiar with baseball field prep, you drag the infield skin, you're painting the batter's box and all the lines on a weekly basis. Practice is often every day, so it's a daily activity of dragging the fields and doing preparation. And after last year, discovered it's about 20 hours of additional labor required to fulfill that need. Again, last year, parents helped fulfill some of those needs, and our existing grounds crew, which is only 4 people, helped do these 3 middle school baseball teams as well. So this position was a creative collaboration of how do we solve this. So to get those extra 20 hours during the baseball season, taking an existing part-time position and making it full-time gets those 20 hours in that period. There's other needs in the district that we're fulfilling via overtime and other circumstances. One of the primary needs is the operations building has never had cleaning in that building. We pay someone overtime to come several days a week to fulfill cleaning. During the non-baseball field prep times, they would clean this building in addition to other duties. That's the short version of this. There's a whole laundry list of things that this person will fulfill, but I believe the need's justified to take it from a part-time position of 20 hours to 40 hours a week. Primarily will help us accomplish the middle school baseball needs.
And this is like the person is going to become full-time, or do we define someone to?
So the position is currently vacated. We're filling
Yeah.
that part-time with a substitute custodian. So this would be a new hire. It's a little bit different than the other custodians where they're going to have some grounds work. So it's more of a hybrid. That's why we created a different job description for this person so that they will understand the needs for that role.
So just to have a better understanding, if we didn't, because when baseball was presented, which is great, it was that there was going to be no cost to the district. So if we presenting this position primarily because of baseball?
I would say yes, that is the primary motivation to do this. There's obviously some other things I mentioned.
Right.
that there's deficiencies elsewhere that we're paying overtime to fulfill. So this accomplishes more than just baseball, but that was the primary motivation, looking at how do we solve that? Because the whole parent participation didn't really come together as well as we thought it would last year. And simply 20 hours is the number we came up with to make it work the right way, to do the best interest of the athletes.
And also the pay is different because they're different salaries, right? What a custodian gets and what a person that's ground maintenance gets. Correct, isn't that different?
That's correct. So this would be a custodial rate. Their primary function, 20 hours is strictly cleaning as it is today. And the other duties, we're not holding them to get a pesticide applicator license. Is one of the reasons that the maintenance or grounds people are paid higher, so they won't be applying pesticides, really solving the deficiency is to have them do more grounds work here, freeing up time of our existing groundskeepers to do this work elsewhere. So they'll primarily be cutting grass. We felt that was fair because there's already custodians that do cut grass. We're not asking them to perform the same job that a groundsperson pay rate would accomplish. This is truly the same as what a custodian would do.
Now, would they be doing this at at Hilltown Park, Deep Run, and South, which is?
The grounds crew, so I would keep them on this campus. So the primary role is now the 20-hour position is the field house and some high school work. They would fulfill that, but also they would cut grass, taking that 20 hours away from the grounds crew that's here that has trucks and trailers, the pesticide license, and all the equipment to do the field work at those 3 locations you mentioned. So it's really freeing up more time for them, concentrating them here on this campus. Kind of a shell game to a degree, but keeping it simple for this person. They don't have to have special skills besides cutting grass, and that's not complicated. Primarily, it's a cleaning job with some grass cutting added to it.
Do we know about what this will cost? What is it?
Same as,
And what is that?
besides benefit changes and things like that, it goes from a part-time to a full-time.
I don't know what that is number-wise, I guess.
The hourly rate would be the same, but if there's additional cost for benefits, that might change.
So we can fit that in the budget.
One.
Sean, fit that in the budget.
We're gonna try.
But was baseball really supposed to be like zero cost to the district?
I thought it
Well,
wasn't.
it was-
Parent volunteers were saying they were
It
going
was
to do it.
rushed
It's
through.
my
It
understanding.
certainly
It's not.
sounded good, like it was feasible, but there honestly just was not enough parent participation to make these fields the way that they should be.
So
So
it
is
should
it
have been
safe to
done
s-
first and then moved on forward, I guess, because now.
If we were not to move forward with this position, it would be safe to say the 3 grounds crew would accrue additional overtime that could potentially exceed this because of the work that is required here at the home base.
If they were willing. You have to think about, this is spring to summer, so it's hot period, grass is growing. This is the time when they are the most stretched thin. To ask them to work longer hours, I don't know if that would be successful. It's a good idea. If this didn't come,
How do, like, Pembroke is one of the only schools that didn't have a baseball team in past. So I guess my question is, how do other school districts, how have they done it within, I guess, their budget, since it's seeming like, Sean said we can try. But can you also give clarity to the 20 hours again?
May I take that question, please? Coming from another school district recently. I think one of the challenges here is these 3 baseball fields are, if you look at our geography here, they're not at the actual schools. And I'm amazed that we only have 4 groundskeepers with the amount of land that we have and there's 1 at Central and then 3 here. It's actually, I think, very efficient, as I look at this.
all right,
Well, Deep Run, they have their own groundskeeper, so how does that work?
so the field prep, they don't do, so to quantify the hours, so on a daily basis, it's an hour approximated to groundskeeper gets in his truck, hooks up his trailer, loads a tractor and the equipment needed to drag a field, drives to a location, there's 3, everything's multiplied by 3, Central, North, and South middle schools. So 3 different locations on a daily basis. I approximated an hour for them to load up, get to that field, and on an average day, they drag the field and they go back to where their normal grounds routine. On once a week for games, they are lining the fields, which is either paint or chalk. That's at least another hour or 2 in addition to that. So when you total it all up with 3 middle schools, you're 18 to 20 hours. And spring typically is a wet season. All these games are, I'm not going to say they're critical, but there's limited opportunities to get them in, and they always push to get it done. So we might be removing water from infield skins, putting down drying agents. That's really going to exceed that 20 hours. So it's my best approximation.
And is this the same thing that they do for the girls softball? They hook up the trailer, they do the same thing, it's just obviously more because it's for baseball games, and obviously it either doubles if it's not the same day as the girls softball game over at Deep Run. Is it that similar?
That's correct. So we currently are performing the same duties for varsity and JV at other locations for softball and baseball. This was, again, an addition last year to add 3 more teams, 3 more fields, and quantifying it comes up to 20 hours.
We have to do it, right? It's not realistic for the parents to do it. We're doing it for everyone else. We just have to bite the bullet.
That was a stopgap then, parents do it that night.
So you have to have somebody.
Have we looked at scheduling too? Like, I understand the need for it, but have we looked at scheduling too to try to schedule so if there's a girls softball game going on the same day, obviously it's multiple fields, but you're not, hooking everything up and preparing it, like you can get there and do both. Like, have we, are we going to look at that, or have we? I guess the games are probably already pre-scheduled already, but then that for future.
I will say our grounds crew has, as Angelo's mentioned, they are very efficient, and we often buy equipment to make their job more faster, to try to bridge the gap of time they're already stretched in. This is just adding way more on top of what they're already stretched in doing. To your point, yes, they're doing other fields. It's not as simple as to just go from field to field as much as it seems it would be that way. Games are on different days, practices. It's just a whole nother level of work. I would have loved to say we need another grounds person, but this reduces the cost and impact. This was the most cost-effective solution that I could come up with. Could we use another grounds person at that rate? We certainly could. But I think this is a medium solution fiscally to solve the problem that we do have.
What would be the rough difference between the 2 options, like a full-blown grounds person versus the hybrid?
I'd say probably $5 an hour. I'm not sure, $5 or $6 an hour.
What's that in a year?
I would certainly love to have another groundskeeper if that's the direction. But again, I was trying to solve it with the resources we have, instead of a whole other position, just expanding a position. And I believe it can be successful.
This method adds about 20,000 in salary, whereas a groundskeeper is going to be about 60,000 in salary. So
We don't have an alternative,
we need more help. We need more help to get.
right? You can't force people to work overtime.
And
Trying to save money.
I think this is the most cost-effective solution. And people being given fair opportunities. We're not asking to do something that's out of the job description completely. This is obviously something slightly different than others, but the pay range, I think it fits that pay description and duties.
Is that the last one? Sorry.
Okay.
I was like, I don't have another thing else to say. Did anyone have any questions about any of those job descriptions? No, good. All right, perfect, thanks. The next is the teledoc. Tara will go over the cost analysis.
So there was an attachment on the agenda that walked through the cost analysis. I know there were some questions last month. So did anyone have any questions with the cost analysis that they specifically had?
It was on the agenda at the last meeting.
Yeah, but-
There's an attachment on this
For
agenda.
this one,
Mhm.
yeah, it shows how,
Yeah, because it was asked, so she.
depending on how
So-
many people use it.
Yeah, I know that there was conversation regarding whether the cost was budgeted for. And depending on the percentage of people that switch from urgent care visits to the teledoc visits, there actually could be no cost to the district as well as a cost savings. Just it depends on how many people switch from that urgent care visit to a teledoc visit. And this cost analysis is strictly with urgent care. So this doesn't include ER visits, that someone might not go to the ER, they might use teledoc, and that would be a greater savings.
Nice option too, for people who don't want to go to urgent care. So I think a lot of people would use it. I would
Absolutely.
use that for my dog too. So trips, all these trips.
Well, maybe along the same lines of like the evaluation, that if we use it and if we're paying for it and people aren't using it, we probably want to rediscuss
I think
it.
it's
So.
great.
Do we make it, and I like that concept, do we want to do it on a quarterly basis? Every quarter, take a look at the numbers and,
Well, you could report back to us, see what's, right?
Yeah, maybe we can give it time to get off the ground a little bit, but I agree.
no, yeah, I mean, it gives us a way, at least to have some form of control over it, see if it's being used or not.
Is it easy to track? You can get a report, right?
We will get a report.
You can share that.
We can get a report, we can share back the
Sean, what does that do to your
information.
budget?
Actually, this doesn't do anything to our budget. This
Should,
will save us money in our total healthcare costs. As far as our premiums, it won't impact our premiums going into the healthcare fund. But this is great. I mean, if 68 of these visits change from urgent care, of the 435, and 68 change from urgent care to this, we break even. Anything above that is savings to the district. So, I mean, you got to think that we're going to get more than 26%. So,
well, that's what we're gonna find out.
which we're going to find out. Yeah.
Sure.
So we would like the board's approval to move forward with reaching out to IBC to add this to our current contract. And then we would bring that new updated contract to the board for approval.
You good with that?
I think it's worth noting, this also has a mental health component to it as well. So if our employees or their dependents are having an episode or need some support, it has that feature as well.
It also has dermatology included as well, so there are 3 sections.
I think it sounds
Okay.
great.
Way with the future.
All right, perfect. We can move right along to third-party administrator for healthcare benefits. Tara will go over because our current broker is currently retiring, so that's why we're looking for somebody else. Go, Tara.
So Mr. Dalbert and I met with 4 organizations that submitted proposals to us on February the 6th. We had some nice conversations with each one of the organizations, and after an internal discussion, the organization that we would like to bring forward as our recommendation is Conrad Siegel. Conrad Siegel works with our district already. They provide us services with our ACA reporting, which is related to healthcare. So the total cost for Conrad Siegel, which includes a benefit administration portal, is $134,000 for the first year.
Where is this? Where is
It's a third party.
It's the third.
There's no attachment?
There's no attachment.
Okay, all right.
Sorry. So based on what we are paying our current third-party administrator right now, and what we would be paying Conrad Siegel moving forward, if the board is moving forward to approval, we would be saving around $15,000 per year.
Same quality?
So $134,000 the first year, and going on, is it the same every other years?
So they didn't provide us with the exact number. Sean, did you?
Yeah,
have the
it's
increase?
$2,500 increase, so it's not 92.5, or I'm sorry, it's 2,500 more the second year and 2,500 more the third year, so it still remains less than what we're currently paying.
So the contract's for 3 years.
Yeah, this one's for 3 years, yeah. And then we'll reevaluate.
And we're still saving.
Yep, we're still saving.
And you're both happy with the
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. They come highly recommended.
Oh.
And we already have a existing relationship with them, and they do wonderful work for us in that relationship, so we have a very good feeling about working with them.
Does anyone have any questions? And next is tenure.
We have the
There's one more.
Oh,
Non-contract.
non-contract
Employee
employees.
compensation.
Thank you.
We're in support of it.
The only change to this is we would be removing the communications and public relations coordinator and school police officer / director of security. We moved those two positions into Act 93 at our last meeting, so we're removing them from the miscellaneous contract. And then
We good with that? Any questions?
Yeah.
Alright. Now we're just gonna.
tenure. Okay. So we have one individual, Constance Smellin. She will be obtaining tenure at our board meeting.
Do we need to discuss that? Or what do we, I don't remember doing.
We just share that with you
Yeah.
at the
Okay.
personnel committee, and then it will be for approval at the board meeting.
Good.
So are there any questions? So the next personnel committee meeting is scheduled for March 11th, and I guess